from Kelly Miles. But
We're not bringing any chapstick. You got to show up.
no, that's too far. St. George is too much effort.
Besides, how many little garbage cans can you have? I mean,
Yeah, and
Waste management, garbage cans.
and the go bags and
Yeah, Leslie's not gonna be able to go though.
Oh, isn't she?
They changed her
in the summer. So.
schedule, so she works Saturday through.
All right.
We'd like to call to order our Riverdale City Council meeting for Tuesday, March 19th, 2024. Please let the record show that all City Council members are present, with Councilor Hanson joining via telephone. We also have members of the city staff as well as members of the public with us tonight. We have asked Brandon Cooper to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right. Repeat after me. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I have asked Councilor Hawes to offer our invocation.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to meet this evening as a city council. We ask thee to bless us with thy spirit, that we will be able to make the decisions for our community in the best manner that we are able to. We ask thee to protect and keep our staff and all those and our citizens safe. Especially bless our police officers and firefighters as they keep us safe. We thank thee for all that they do, and we say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilor Hawes. We'll now move on to public comment. This is an opportunity to address the City Council regarding your concerns or ideas. No action will be taken during the public comment. If you do approach the microphone, please state your name and the city that you reside in, and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Seeing none, we'll move on to presentations and reports. I have a couple of items. I sent an email to the City Council. Hopefully you saw that we did get a ramp grant, the rare ramp grant. Rich Taylor got, I think, was it $50,000, Rich, to help replace our bleachers at the community center. So that's fantastic. We appreciate the work he put in for that. And it's good to know that we can get those occasionally. They are very helpful to us. On that same note, I was approached by the YCC, and they would like us to donate some money to them. So I'm just giving you the heads up on it. We haven't traditionally done that sort of thing, but they are looking for like $5,100, and this would not be a one-time donation. This would be a yearly donation. So I'm just giving you the heads up so you can start to think about how you feel about that. The Lions Club is having their spaghetti dinner fundraiser on April 19th. Several of us will be gone that night, but the 2 council members that are in town, I'd invite you to attend that and help them. I told them we'd be happy to send some representatives to support that, the ones that are in town. So hopefully you can go. It's a fun evening, and it's for a great cause. They use the money for just great things. So. And just the last thing, I had a meeting today about the Three Gates Trail. That's the trail that's going to run on the old Bamberger line and comes into the Parker Drive here and goes all the way to Layton. They were awarded a grant to the Wasatch Front Regional Council for a fiscal and economic impact study. That's moving forward. One really interesting thing, UDOT bought that property, and it was thought that they would give it to the county. But the latest on that is UDOT is going to keep that property. UDOT had originally said they didn't want to be in the trail business, but now they are going to be in the trail business, I guess, and they're going to keep that. They are still asking the cities eventually to maybe try and maintain them. None of it actually sits in Riverdale City, even though they've asked me to come to the meetings because it just kind of touches our city along the way. I'm hoping we can enjoy the benefits of that trail and let Ogden and Roy and those guys maintain it. But it's going to be quite a trail. It's a big, long trail, and it's got a lot of potential. Anyway, that's all I have for my report. Number 2, swearing in officers Brinkman and Farnsworth. Want to do those one at a time or do them at the same time? Okay, Chief Warren.
So, just to introduce these guys, we have Dustin Farnsworth and Landon Brinkman. I'll start off in the order they came here. Landon started just a little bit sooner. He comes to us from Weber County Sheriff's Office. He was a correctional officer out there for a couple years. But long before that, if you might recognize the last name Brinkman, he's been dedicated and a part of our department for, well, since he's been born. And so I love hiring officers that have some wood in the fire for the place they work. You know, and I think if you love the place you work and you're invested in it, you do a better job. And I can attest that since he was a little lad, he's heard nothing but good things about Riverdale Police Department and the culture we have and the beliefs that we have. And so when the opportunity came up to hire him, I guess it's perfect timing. I guess I'm perfect for the chief to retire, but perfect in the fact that Landon was at the age that we could hire him. So he's got some good experience in corrections, and he's got a supporting wife and a daughter. And not to skip to Dustin's in a second, I'll just speak on behalf of both of their families. This is a big commitment as a police officer when you go into this profession. Not just a big commitment for them, but for their families. And both of their wives have expressed their support for them. And I just want to express our gratitude to their wives and their kids and thank them for the sacrifices they make, because there's a lot of times at night where they have to kind of pick up where these guys can't be there, or holidays and birthdays and different things. And in order to be a great police officer, you have to have a really great wife and kids, and I know these two both have that. So next, like I said, is Dustin Farnsworth. He comes to us from North Ogden. He was a canine officer at the time when he left there. He'd been there about 7 years and a couple years in corrections. He's also got a little wood in the fire. He's got some ties to Riverdale, and so I know he loves this community. And some of you guys may know him or may not, but he's invested in Riverdale as well. And I can't tell you how excited we are to have him on board. He brings a lot of experience and knowledge from North Ogden, and it's between the two. We have a newer guy with a little more experience, so they complement each other well as far as who we're replacing. So I guess I'll just end on, I'm just grateful that they chose Riverdale, and I want to thank them and their families for supporting them in their careers and their choice to be here. So that's all I got. Let's get sworn in. Unless you guys want to say something. Nope. All right.
Same time?
Yep.
Right here. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Landon Farnsworth,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution
that I will support and defend the Constitution
of the United States of America
of the United States of America
and the state of Utah
and the state of Utah
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will discharge my duties
That I will discharge my duties
as a Riverdale City Police Officer with fidelity.
as a Riverdale City Police Officer with fidelity.
Thank you. I want to say something real quickly. We do take the families into consideration here in Riverdale, and I know it's part of the culture here in our police department that it's not just the officers, but it's their entire family. And I hope the families were able to pay attention to Counselor Hawes's prayer tonight. That's one of my favorite things about bringing the prayer back here to Riverdale, is that it gives the council an opportunity to pray for our public safety officers. And And it's not just here. I can tell you it's not just here in this meeting. There's prayers said in homes all over that are for our employees and for our public safety officers. So anyway, just know that the families that are here know that you are in our thoughts a lot. And we appreciate what you do. Riverdale's a great city. We're thrilled to have you guys. And we're just look forward to, we hope you're here for a long, long time. So anyway, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
could we invite their wives to stand?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's have the wives stand up.
Just so that we know.
Anyway,
who they are.
thank you. Thank you for your sacrifice as well. We really appreciate it. Yeah. Okay, that's wonderful. We'll now move on to number 3, the city administration report. Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe I would just add a little bit, Casey didn't cover those connections really well. As I understand it, Officer Farnsworth lives here in Riverdale, is that correct? So that is his connection here. He's also gotten us in trouble with North Ogden City, at least our mayor. We meet in these things all the time, and when we steal people from somewhere else, they always rib Mayor Mitchell. So we've heard all about it with North Ogden. And then obviously, and this is more for the newer guys, and Casey alluded to this, Mike, and you're probably aware of this, but Brandon might not. Chief Brinkman was our chief of the police department until just recently, so that's the connection, and this is his son. So we're certainly excited to have both of them on board. And Scott was a rock around this community for a long time, so hopefully that rubbed off on his son, and we'll get the same thing out of him. So thank you. Yeah. All right, thank you. Our department reports, they are in the packet, and I think I have every department head here tonight, so.
Hey, Scott, is that what you're doing?
I don't know if you have any questions on any of the department head reports that are in there.
When he was here.
Tonight would be a good night if you had questions on that. As we kind of talked a little bit about this in strategic planning, there are times that there's little hidden things in those reports that sometimes you guys don't see. So as you go through those, take your time to read through those. If you have questions, bring them out in the meeting. It's the second meeting of the month when we'll have those, but there's a lot of information in there sometimes that you're not even aware is in there. So one of the things I did want to draw your attention to, mainly because it's just on my mind recently, but the crime bulletin, the Riverdale Police Department crime bulletin that they dot where the traffic accidents occur in Riverdale. It just is always funny to me when we recently had a meeting with some county officials and stuff, and they had each city there, and they had taken it upon, they brought this group in to do this study through all of Weber County to figure out which roads are the most dangerous in Weber County, and they designated 3 for Riverdale. Did I talk about this as strategic planning? What 3 do you think they picked for Riverdale?
Riverdale.
Obviously Riverdale Road.
1050.
1050.
South Weaver,
South Weaver, yeah, that's the 3 they picked.
which are all state roads.
Michelle was with me on that. Yeah, they're all state roads. That's what's ironic about it. But when you talk to these people, they just don't understand the impact that Riverdale Road has on this community. If you look at that crime bulletin map, there is one incident that looks like it happened right up about the roundabout on 4400. Everything else was all on Riverdale Road. And I was trying to explain this to that guy that day, and they don't understand it. They just don't get it. And I said, I'm not sure why you'd pick 1050. I don't ever. In fact, even on Riverdale Road, since they've widened that, we have not had a fatality on Riverdale Road. Nothing in the last 5 years, and all these other cities have had them all over the place. But their solution to everything was to put bike paths in and rumble strips and narrow them down as much as they can. And I said, if you try that on South Weaver Drive, you're going to be down to 1 lane. It's already bad enough. I said, did you guys even drive out there and look at this? I mean, you just can't. That's not the solution to improve traffic flow on South, really anywhere. But that's what they were doing on everything, was pinching these things down. I said, I don't know how you're going to pinch down Riverdale Road. Good luck on that one. But needless to say, I told them if they tried to do some of these changes in Riverdale that my council would not be too happy about that one. So don't even try it. And they backed off. But it was kind of comical listening to them. Not sure what their purpose was, but we voiced our strong opposition to all of that. So, March anniversaries, we have what we generally do is we recognize people in their 5-year cycles, but also people who have a few additional years. Most of these are smaller than 5 years, except for Tyrell Dalton. He's sitting at 6 years. But we don't officially recognize them until they're on their 5 year. And so we do have one tonight. It's actually 10 years. That's Miranda Rizzi. She works for Rich's department and serves all of our the whole senior facility is kind of her baby out there. Every aspect of that, all the programs, the lunches, everything really, and that's where she's housed. So, Miranda, we have a little certificate here, and we'll have the mayor present that to you and just tell you thanks for 10 years of great service.
All right. Well, congratulations on 10 years. I can't believe it's been 10 years. That's crazy. Let's get a good picture so we can put us on. And so, anyway, I present you the certificate. And also, there's there as well for you, a big card. And so, anyway, some of the seniors love you. I think we've all heard from the seniors if we ever do anything to Miranda, and it's not just the seniors in Riverdale, it's seniors all over the county. I think we're finding that out. She has started a little project where she's tracking where the seniors are coming from, and finding Kaysville, West Point, yeah, Davis County, and we've got quite the senior center, yeah. So, and we've got quite a program, yeah, and so we appreciate you, all you do for our city, and I know that the residents you serve. There you go.
We have met with, and we'll get into some of that later on when we get into some of the budgets, and Rich will give us a little presentation, but just from the people, if you combined Roy and Ogden, wasn't it, Rich, Miranda? When we had just the early updates, that alone outnumbered our own residents, just between those two cities. So that just tells you how many people are coming into this community and taking advantage of our programs there. But Rich will give you some more updates on that as we go.
Councilor Arnold.
Miranda, I'd just like to say thank you for, you're one of the employees for the city that actually keeps me involved, and I'm assuming us involved. You know, you're willing to step up and say this is wrong or this is right. So, and I appreciate that. So, thank you.
Okay, our staffing authorization, that's in your packet. That we haven't changed other than we keep losing police and fire guys. Those show quite heavily on there. And somewhere we've got to find a good attorney around here. We're down on that one. Cody, can you figure that one out? But it's still all, that none of that's really changed other than a loss. Again, we've had a firefighter, if he hasn't left, or left, what's that?
So are we looking for a good attorney?
That's what I said. We need to find a good one around here somewhere, so.
A good one, yeah.
I did say that on purpose, so. But Chief Shawley, did you have, I think we just got a resignation, right, this week? So we're going to be repeating this never-ending process, it seems like, anymore. But hopefully we'll touch a little bit on that when we get into some department reports tonight. So, community development report. Again, Brandon's pretty much up to speed on this. Not a lot of things. I mean, there are some things going on. Obviously, we have two of them tonight that are going to appear for you. We also have the Ashley is getting really just biting at the bit to get open. And speaking of that, there is a scheduled tentatively right now, April 12th, grand opening at 1 o'clock. So if you guys can get that on your calendar, get over there and support them on that. They're really excited to get open. And if you've driven by there, you can see it's getting pretty close. So most of those other things we won't get into a lot of details. We've been meeting with everybody. Brandon's probably wondering why he signed up for all these meetings, but senior center stuff, West Bench, RDA, even a roundabout on down there at the bottom of Ritter Drive. We're trying to get all this stuff pushed in there and getting it done. The roundabout's getting a little more concerning. It's so close, and then when we start doing some developing down there, especially on that the old Motor View property, it'd be nice to have that, going at the same time, or maybe even a little bit earlier. Just, we got to get it done. It's been sitting there forever. And so all these things are things we've dumped on Brandon, and he's got his plate full right now, but I have no question he'll be able to handle all that. I think that's pretty much all I have. Do you have any questions for me on any of that stuff?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brooks. We'll now move on to consent items. We're going to do consent item number 1, consideration to approve the meeting minutes from the February 6th council work session and council meeting, as well as the minutes from the February 20th work session and council meeting. Are there any corrections or changes to those minutes? Seeing none, a motion to approve consent item number 1 would be in order.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? All in favor say yes.
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 Counselor Hanson, are you still there?
Yes, I said yes. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you. Okay, that's unanimous. Very good. All right, our second consent item is kind of exciting. We are going to appoint Colleen Henstra to the Planning Commission. And I'm sorry to spring this on you, Colleen. I really did mean to tell you, but I was going to ask you to come up and maybe just introduce yourself. And also tell just a little bit about why you want to be on the Planning Commission. You just tell them what you told me in our little interview. So
The 30-minute version?
no, the shorter
Okay.
one. Well, Councilor Arnold, 30 minutes? No, shorter.
I'm good.
I'm Colleen Henstra. I've been a Riverdale citizen since I was 14. I guess I can count myself as a citizen at that age, right? I love Riverdale. I think most of the people that live here really do. And I've been involved in things over the years. You know, my kids used to be part of the 4th of July free kids events. Now we just do the big blow house things, but they used to have actual activities. When my kids got older, we volunteered to help run those activities. A couple of my kids were on the youth city council. 2 of my married children have bought homes here in Riverdale. We just love Riverdale. And I think most of our citizens can say the same thing. But I have a great need to serve other people. I serve in a leadership capacity in my work, and I like to volunteer and do community events. I serve on a couple of different boards, and the Planning Commission just kind of made sense. I think I was here, maybe it was 2 years ago, seeking a city council position. That didn't work out, so Planning Commission seems like a really good fit for me. But I like to see the development in Riverdale and be part of that and kind of have a voice in what happens here. So that's why I've asked to be part of the Planning Commission.
Any questions for Ms. Henstra? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, with that, we would need a motion to approve the appointment of Colleen Henstra to the Planning Commission.
Move to approve Colleen Henstra to the Planning Commission.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor say yes.
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 All right, that passes unanimously as well. Thank you. We'll now move on to our action items. Number 1, consideration of approval of Schneider's Riverside Golf Course amended site plan request located at 5460 South Weaver Drive in Riverdale, as requested by Riverside Golf Course and North Shore Excavation. Mr. Cooper.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council. As I mentioned before, it is my pleasure to be here, first time, so thank you very much. This and the other item on the agenda tonight was in progress prior to my arrival, and so I was able to pick it up and see it through tonight. I do have just a few slides to help with the presentation and some of the information. So you all are familiar with this site. This is the Riverside Golf Course. It's approximately 100 acres. We do have some representatives from the petitioner here today, Mr. Brent Kinley and Mr. Cody Taylor. This is an application for an amended site plan for a parking lot, which is adjacent to the existing parking lot that they have currently. This is in the A1 zone, but the golf course itself, by and large, is in the O1 zone. And so during our review, we looked at both, but the conditions in which the review is based on is at the A1 zone. There was a home there that was demolished. You can see that here on the left. The site has been cleared. They're ready for paving. I understand there's an event that they're trying to get ready for, and then obviously just the need for parking. I think that's a good thing that parking is being built at the golf course. We talked to Mr. Schneider in the Planning Commission meeting, and there he is now. Speak of the devil. And so it's a good thing to see this kind of progress. Some of the review items that we looked at were obviously drainage, the appropriateness of the use, which in the A1 zone, anything ancillary to the approved use, like parking, is permitted. We looked at some of the utilities that were there prior to this being a parking lot that were associated with the home. And so all of those things came into our review. We took that to the Planning Commission on March 12th. They found found that it is in conformance with the general plan. It does comply with the land use ordinance in the A1 zone, and that it does comply with all the Riverdale City Code. And they made the recommendation to you all for approval, subject to a few items that staff is still working out associated with the stormwater and the cleanup of the stormwater as it hits the stormwater system and goes into the ponds that are located on site at the golf course. We understand that none of this is entering the river. It's all used for either percolation or irrigation at the golf course, but there is some concern for oil water separation, and so they've made some changes to the plan that is in your packet, and those changes are under current review right now, but they are consistent with our comments from Mr. Douglas and myself. We have received their stormwater calculations and their plan, and so everything is satisfactory. We just need to button up a few things, and so we would recommend approval tonight by you all. Any questions?
Councilor Arnold. Volume's all the way up.
Ernie, I would say it's about time. It's about time.
Thank you.
I guess it's a good sign if the golf course is expanding the parking lot. So I think that's a good sign in my mind. Any other questions for Mr. Cooper? Okay, seeing none, a motion would be in order.
I would move to approve the amended site plan requested for Schneider's Riverside Golf Course as listed in the packet.
Okay, we have a motion.
That, just for clarification, Mike, that's subject to the modifications that are still being worked out.
Yeah,
Okay.
subject to those recommendations.
Yes, thank you.
All right, we do have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
Counselor Hanson?
Yes.
Counselor Arnold?
Yes.
Counselor Richter?
Yes.
Counselor Stevens?
Yes.
Counselor Hawes?
Yes.
All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, action item number 2. Thank you for being here tonight. Number 2, consideration of ordinance 979 for Take 5 small subdivision request located at approximately 4023 South Riverdale Road in Riverdale, as requested by Reeve and Associates and Blue Lube LLC. Mr. Cooper.
Thank you. So this is something that you've seen before in the form of a site plan. If you've been to this part of town, you'll notice that these two buildings are actually complete. The site plan was approved, construction was permitted and complete, and now the owner is seeking a subdivision of the single lot in which the two buildings were built on. And so here's the map of that location, 4019 and 4023 Riverdale Road. The dates are there in terms of what has been approved before. There was a conditional use permit, and that was approved as well. We did the review under the subdivision code and the C3 zoning code, as well as 1014 and 1015 as it relates to parking. The parcel is about 0.99 acres, or excuse me, the area is 0.99 acres. It is two parcels now under this proposal. Parcel 1 is the Take 5 parcel. Parcel 2 is the Fizz parcel. And so our review consisted of looking at the separation of a single parcel that had two buildings on it into two parcels that would need shared access of travel, utilities, all those kinds of things. And so we looked at the drainage easements, the utility easements, stormwater, the landscaping, and how it would be bifurcated and those kind of things. There is a reciprocal easement agreement that is associated with these types of shared uses, and that was the bulk of the comments with the review by Mr. Douglas, myself, and the city engineer. And so those things have been revised and returned to us satisfactory. They have addressed all of the needs for cross-access easement. There's some outstanding issues when it comes to the landscaping that was disturbed associated with this site and an adjacent site. And so I think there's some additional conversation as spring comes that we'll want to look at through enforcement to make sure that those things get cleaned up a little bit. Again, the Planning Commission found that this did comply with Riverdale City Code, subject to some of the comments that were related to that reciprocal easement agreement, which again have been satisfied. They recommended approval back on the 12th, and the staff finds the same approval, subject to anything that might occur in terms of finalizing the plat, creating a Mylar, getting all the necessary signatures related to that, and making a recordation. And so, again, staff recommends council approval.
Any questions for Mr. Cooper? Okay, seeing none, a motion would be in order.
I can do that. Move to approve ordinance 979 to create a subdivision known as the Take 5 Small Subdivision, as shown in the packet.
Okay. Does he need to add anything to that, or with?
I probably would put the same language, subject to anything that staff still has.
Recommendations
Correct.
made by the planning commission. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
Counselor Haas,
Yes.
Counselor Stevens,
Yes.
Counselor Arnold,
Yes.
Counselor Richter,
Yes.
Counselor Hanson.
Yes.
All right, that passes unanimously as well. Thank you. Item number 3, consideration of resolution 2024-05, awarding a bid for the 2024 roadway crack seal project to Rock Ridge Construction. Mr. Douglas. Thank you for coming up to the microphone.
Thank you, Mayor. So you had the bid in your packet. We have, as we said before, we have not worked with these gentlemen before. We have tried to thoroughly vet them and feel like they will be able to do the work. They've went through line item, each item, and they have the equipment to do the work. So based on that, I would recommend approval. We will, we do have our inspector, so we'll be out on the job, and hopefully we found. There's always new guys out there, and we haven't worked with everybody, so we're always going to have new guys coming on, but they seem like they can do the job, so we would recommend approval of them.
Any questions? Seeing none, a motion would be in order.
Move to approve resolution 2024-05, awarding a bid for the 2024 roadway crack seal project to Rock Ridge Construction.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? I was going to say, do we need, that's what I was kind of wondering. Do we need a dollar value in there?
We probably should, yeah.
Okay.
Not to exceed an amount.
It's not.
It should have been on the executive
Not to
summary.
exceed 40.
Not to exceed $43,543.50.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hawes, for getting that so quickly. Okay, we do have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. I thought I was going to die there for a second.
Proud
So
tonight.
thank you for the second. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
Counselor Richter,
Yes.
Counselor Haas,
Yes.
Counselor Arnold, Counselor Hanson,
Yes.
Counselor Stevens.
Yes.
All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Item number 4, consideration of resolution 2024-06, accepting the annual municipal wastewater report. Mr. Douglas.
Thank you, Mayor. So I know a lot of you that's been on the council have seen this one. It comes every year. It's pretty straightforward. And like I said earlier, I think the main thing is on the sewer system, it's always out of sight and out of mind until there's a backup. And as soon as there's a backup, it affects everybody's life terrible. And we know from past experiences they happen, but we've been on a good roll lately. And I think when we can put a 0 on there for backups for a year, that's what we're looking for. Going forward with this, we do have an issue. So the company we've used for pretty much the last 15 to 20 years, we did find out yesterday they're no longer going to do business in Utah. Luckily, we'd started kind of making a switch last fall and started using another company to do a lot of our stormwater stuff, and they've agreed to probably pick us up. But there's going to be a mad scramble in these communities looking for somebody to fill the void. This company does probably 15 to 20 cities in our area. And they are acting like within 3 months they're going to cease operations in Utah. So hopefully we have an in on these other guys. We've used them over a little bit over the years, and they seem willing to pick us up. So hopefully we'll be back with the same report next year. And if anybody has questions on how our system works or whatever, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Any questions for Mr. Douglas?
I just had one question. In the cost of projected capital improvements piece, it goes by 5-year periods, and there was the last 2 5-year periods, it had NA in there, which I understand, and it's probably just an aspect of the survey itself, but it then asks what those improvements are, and I guess you have to answer something.
If you notice, so they kind of rhetorical in their questions. If you looked earlier, it asked us what our system needed. So our system's complete, right? So we're, other than new add-ons or new builds, we have a complete system. So everything going forward is going to be operation and maintenance and line replacement, that type of thing to keep the system up and running. So it would be liners, pipe replacement, and that type of thing. We're currently working with Hanson Allen Luce to come up with a new capital facilities plan. And so I didn't want to go too far out in the future, and we hope to have that done before end of the year this year. And then next year we'll probably have bigger projected numbers for that once we have them a little more in place for the projects and where they're going to lay out. So
Okay, I just noticed that there was no amounts, but then later on they ask a question of what are you going to do, and
it's
and
just
you have to answer that question too.
Yeah, it's tough
Even though you
because
didn't have
ours pretty much, we're not going to design any new system unless the development requires it. And we don't do treatment. So a lot of the cities are doing both, but we pick up everything. So all we do is collection, and then the treatment's done by Central Weber. And so as far as the capacity, as long as our lines will handle it, we don't have to worry about the treatment capacity because Central Weber takes care of that. They do what they call a will serve letter. So if we have a developer come in, one of the first things we do is send them to Central Weber and say, okay, can you handle the treatment of what this proposal would put into the system? Then the next step would make sure the line's getting it to Central Weber would handle it. But so we're a little bit, the cities in Weber County, most everybody sends them to a centralized treatment plant. I hope I didn't talk around the question, but
That's fine.
All right. If there's no other questions, then a motion would be in order.
Move to approve resolution number 2024-06, accepting the annual municipal wastewater report.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
Counselor Arnold?
Yes.
Counselor Haas?
Yes.
Counselor Stevens?
Yes.
Counselor Hanson? Counselor Hanson?
Yes.
Counselor Victor?
Yes.
All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Douglas. All right, we'll move on to item number 5, discussion concerning implementation of a city survey. Mr. Brooks.
We briefly talked about this on our strategic planning meeting that day. This is something the mayor's been interested in for some time. When we, just by giving a history since I've been here, when we did these surveys previously, they were a ton of work, man. That would take so much time, and it'd take heavy resources. They were just a lot of work, and sometimes you had to scratch your head and wonder if it was really worth it. But times have changed in the last 20 years, and now a lot of this stuff is done electronically, and it's way different than what it was. So I did reach out to both Washington Terrace and South Ogden because I know they're doing this. And South Ogden, as I mentioned earlier, they're kind of ahead of the game on this. They've been doing this for a number of years, and they use Qualtrics. That's Ryan Smith, the guy that owns the Jazz. I don't know if it's still his company, but it was at one point in time. But they do this for cities, and there's a lot of advantages to it. And like I said, they sent me a couple of documents. If you guys are interested in those, I wouldn't mind sending them to you. But they're PDFs, and they're really long. But they're good. There's a lot of good stuff in there, and I think if we decided to do that, that would be, I mean, we would lean heavily on what they've already done rather than reinvent the wheel. But I guess we just have to decide if that's something that's valuable to you or not in comparison to the cost. Now, I did get on their website, and you have to fill out a request to get a bid on that. But I think Mr. Dixon from South Ogden quoted me about $10,000 a year for something like that. you're not limited on just one survey. You could do a number of smaller surveys, like just little things like the example I use, not that we would use it on this, but you could. So when we made discussions about the farmer's market, we could just send out a little survey to all the people who are signed up on that and say, would you guys support a farmer's market or whatever? Because otherwise we're gathering a lot of our data from sources that aren't all that reliable. And I don't know, this would be a whole lot different, but people who sign up for this are people who are obviously interested in what Riverdale City's doing. So I think in that sense, it's probably quite valuable, but we just have to decide. I mean, it's going to cost us money if we're going to do it. I don't think the amount of work is going to be near what it used to be. And we can still get the same results. But Mayor Mitchell and I think Councilor Hanson have both expressed desires to do this. So, but until we get a consensus on it, we haven't pursued it any further than that, just kind of on the surface. So that was what the purpose of the discussion was tonight, to get your input on it and see if it's something you think we should pursue. And we'll get some quotes and stuff, and we can build that into the budget. And I don't think it's something we can afford it, but it's just a matter of whether you want to or not.
Couple of things, when we talk about surveys, there's always a big concern about how do we reach everybody, and will the seniors be able to participate? And they provided some data, and they had participants over 80 years old, participating in their survey. And when I think about it, my parents are in their 70s. They're on Facebook. They could respond to a survey no problem on their phone or something. One of the things I really like about it is it gives the city council some justification and something to stand on. As you make a decision, you have asked the residents what they want, and I don't want to pick an issue that's too charged, like the farmers market. We'll just use that one again. If everybody said they didn't want a farmers market, and you were like, oh, I thought everybody wanted a farmer's market, but if it came back and said, no, I'm not going to your farmer's market and we don't want it, well, then if you make that decision to not do it and people are like, hey, why'd you not do the farmer's market? To say, because most people didn't want the farmer's market. And it gives you, it gives you some feedback to kind of stand on a decision as you make difficult decisions. And that's just my 2 cents. I'm surprised it's that expensive. I kind of had heard some lower numbers.
Well, it might be. I haven't shopped it around, and we would do that, obviously. That was just one of them that popped up in my discussions with him. So,
but Qualtrics does all your surveys. You buy something, it's like powered by Qualtrics, all your surveys. And I would like to see if we could get a better deal, because the numbers I heard from the Terrace and South Ogden were a little lower. But it is something, they sent out a survey right before a meeting. They were going to do a kind of a controversial topic, and they just said, hey, let's get a survey together and send out a thing about this issue, and you can use it all year long. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Any comments or questions?
I'm very supportive, Mr. Mayor. Any opportunity we have to get feedback from the citizens quickly, easily, I think that's a positive.
So does this mean we are legislating by a consensus of opinions from the surveys? I'm being facetious. It's a rhetorical question. I'm not. It has a place. There is something to be said for it. But like what you just said, hey, we got this. Let's find out what the citizens are saying or thinking. Okay, what do we need a city council to vote for? Well, you got 9,000 residents, 1,600 people voted in the municipal election last time. Now, the percentage of registered voters a little over 4,000, because you have a lot of people, not registered children, whatnot. Okay, so 1,600 out of 4,500 registered. Okay, so that is what decided who is the mayor and council. So what are the percentages of participation of people who are taking surveys? Because you're going to find, and again, this is my observation, it's going to be the same people that are going to have the same opinions or be putting forth their opinions repeatedly. It's not going to be a consensus of the citizens. It's a snapshot of a sliver of pie that make up the citizens. And I'm incredulous of the input or over-reliance upon that kind of input. There's a place for it. But it's like, so what do we need Alan to say, well, I think it's this, or somebody else to say, I think it's that. And, it's like, oh, well, 9,300 or 1,900 or 180 people took the survey and said it's this. Where do you draw the line? I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Good comments, and I agree. I mean, you guys would have to sign off on even doing a survey before, and maybe using it right before a controversial issue is not the way to go. Maybe it's more strategic planning, large, how's the city doing type stuff. But good points, Councilor Arnold.
So, I'm in my 13th year on the council, and I've walked the neighborhoods, knocking the doors, mainly for where the issue is affecting someone. And that just is another way to knock doors without walking and knocking doors. You get the park issue with the noise level, and you knock on one house and they're like, this is bull crap, this is so loud, I hate it. You go to the very next house, knock on the door, and they're like, yeah, right on, I love it. So I think any input from the residents, whether it's 180 that are willing to step up, just like running for council. There's, what was there, 5? 4? How many ran this time? Something like that.
Yeah.
But, it's like the people that are going to step up and do it. And if we do something consistently, I think we'll have more people stepping up to understand how it works. And, they might say, hey, it's Tuesday. The Riverdale City survey's coming out today. I need to get on there and doing. So I think it's great because anytime, say somebody says, hey, I like the roundabouts, being put in, and everybody loves the roundabouts till they hear how much they cost. And then people were flipping out. I had somebody come up to me and go, those roundabouts, and I'm just about ready to smile. And he goes, $100,000. And I was like, oh, you just pucker. So, getting any information is wonderful.
Councilor Hawes.
I just pulled the South Ogdens up and their 2023 survey, and they had 588 responses. People take the thing out of 17,541 residents, and 15 of them were answered that they were not residents of the city. So, but I have a degree in statistics, and looking at this, it says, they produce a margin of error on this, and it's like, yeah, but unfortunately, this isn't a random sample of your, you can think that it's random because, they just randomly appear, right? But it's not a random sample, and so you can't be confident. Like they say, we're 95% confident within a 4% plus or minus, and it's like, no, because there's no randomness in it. You didn't, your people who responded, like Councilor Arnold said, probably a lot of them had, and Councilor Stevens, they had an axe to grind. They want something done, or they want to make sure that their voice is heard about, specific things. So I think there are good reasons to do it, but I agree that we can't be over-reliant on the results. But it does kind of give you, it's putting your finger in the air to see which way the wind is blowing, as opposed to trying to, knock on doors and find out as much as you can from talking to people, because, none of us are going to be out there talking to even 4,000 of the adults in the city. So however many we can get, that's a good thing. But, we are having to rely on the the fact that it's not a scientific survey. So,
And I appreciate that comment too.
so
because-
I'm in favor of it.
Yeah. But I saw that on theirs and I thought, oh, okay. But I'm not a statistics guy. And so I was like, oh,
Yeah, it
is
sounds like an
confidence interval's
actuary.
good or whatever. I know a few statistical terms and I'm like, well, that's surprising for only 500 people that it is plus or minus. But, and these are good comments. I'm not saying we have to do this and we're going to do it. In fact, your comment about the wind blowing makes me even pause and think twice because I don't necessarily want to just go with what way the wind's blowing. But people, even about the roundabout we'll just use Facebook. People are really hesitant to say something on Facebook. If they know it's not the prevailing, somebody's like, I hate the roundabouts. Well, you don't get on there and say, I like the roundabouts, because unless you want that attack. And so anyway, let's see. I think you had something.
I just had one thought, and Stacy can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you look at the standard deviation, that's what we're looking at. If you look at both tails of the standard deviation, that's what we're going to get. The majority in the middle, they don't care. They're not involved. They're driving in and out of the city. You got the Colleen Venstras of the world on the one side that are paying attention to everything that the city's doing in a happy way. And then you got somebody that's ticked off. But that does give you your standard deviation. I mean, because you understand what your outliers are, right? I mean,
Yeah, to some
correct
degree.
me if I'm wrong, because I only had the class.
Councilor Richter, did you have something?
Well, no, I think it's just one data element that informs our decision, right? It certainly doesn't direct us or influence to that extent, but it's one thing that can help inform our decision. And I'm supportive of all elements that come in that help us understand better what the citizens are asking for.
Councilor Stevens.
Okay. One of the things that we get paid to do is take time and research and study issues. I think everybody got a couple of emails this past week from people who patronize aspects of our city, the pathway or the community or the senior citizen center. Now, the things that, and they were impassioned, and they wrote, if you take time to write a letter, hey, I tip my hat to you, because you're concerned enough that you'll put in some time and make some effort to try to communicate to decision makers, and that's a good thing. But what was jumped out at me on those two letters that were received was that they didn't know the concept, everything that was going on. They had heard something or somebody said something. Maybe it was rumor, maybe it was not quite all of the issue, and they jumped and were passionate about trying to communicate to the decision makers to not do, or to take action or not take action. Okay, so and part of this doesn't necessarily mean I'm against it. I'm just playing devil's advocate because this is not the panacea. The surveys are not the panacea. Sometimes they're presented as, because unless you are fully informed, you're really not going to be able to make a really good decision. A lot of those decisions are based on emotion and maybe something you heard. And so it's kind of a little, and again, who writes the questions and how are they presented and how much information is known to the public, and are all the superfluous peripheral things taken into context. There's just, you hear of surveys on the news. Surveys is cheap news. That's when a news station doesn't have any news. So they create a news by taking a survey, which is crock, which is, absolutely BS because it's not news, but yet it's presented as news. Now, does that mean that when, we took a survey and the citizens said X, or there was whatever. And it's just like, you know, anyway, those are skeptics, devil's advocate observations.
Yeah. Counselor Hanson, did you have any comments?
I do. I do think there's some value in it from a public interest standpoint. It looks really good, I feel like, to the residents that the city cares about what they think. And I do agree with everyone though that, you know, this is just one piece of information worth considering, and maybe the value, it doesn't mean that it's going to make our decisions for us, but I do think that there's value in it. And I think it's important to those residents who are willing to participate and share their opinions to know that we care and we want to hear what they have to say. And so I think they would find value in it. But I agree. I think, you know, this can't take the place of the city council in decision making. And luckily, we all come from different areas of the city with different backgrounds and different opinions on how to approach things. And so really it just kind of adds into our own personal viewpoints as we discuss and move forward with decisions. But I would be in favor for sure of moving forward with something.
So, Counselor.
I just had one more thought. If you look at like the swim night issue last year, you know, because they upped the prices, we only had so much in the budget. And when it hit Facebook, everybody started really churning about why are we limiting the number of swim nights. And then we were able to say, hey, this is the amount in the budget. This is what happened. They did. And we were actually able to respond. And people were very understanding once we talked about the budget and what they did, and we reduced the number of swim nights. And I think that's just one way to get ahead of that. Instead of like dropping it on them and trying to defend everything we're doing, you can say, hey, the city wants a pool. You know, 578 people surveyed said they wanted a pool, and you know, it's not in the budget. It's not going to happen. So just something like that to respond.
Well, and that's such a good example because it reminds me that that's how the swim nights came about in the first place, is because the city was doing a survey and the residents could share what services they wanted. A lot of residents, you know, it comes up from time to time that residents want the city to have a pool, but because it came up so often in these surveys, the staff was able to come up with this idea to work with Roy to do the swim nights. And so we were able to find a solution and provide a new service that the residents really enjoy. So there is some good that can come from the surveys if we look for it and we use them for that purpose, you know. But I think that's a good example of how it can be beneficial.
So, Mr. Brooks, we're just looking for a consensus to maybe pursue, get a bid.
And I don't know that we even need to do that, Mayor. The whole idea is I didn't want to put a lot of time and effort into something that wasn't going anywhere, but I think from what the discussion was tonight, we'll continue to pursue this and look at it. We'll narrow that down a little bit more, get you some better data and figures and stuff, and then bring that back. But we'll probably at least plan on even incorporating it into the budget at this point, and then we can discuss it later for a final vote. So I just wanted to get an idea. I didn't know where everybody was, so we're good.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item number H, comments. Any comments from the city council for this meeting? Any, Councilor Haas?
Yeah, I asked earlier about the before anybody was here really about the trail, because as I was responding to some of those questions on Facebook, I pulled up a map and I realized that the trail, there's one part of the trail that really kind of moves way into the private property, the apartment property. And so I was wondering if what there is in the developer's agreement or whatever there is regarding what will happen with the trail as they develop their land. Will the trail continue to, I mean, I'm sure that the trail will continue. Will it move? Will it be improved by them or?
Sean, do you want to touch that one, or?
Unity.
I know my understanding of it, but I think Sean would probably be a better source for us because he's the old guy around here and he was around when all that happened. So we'll call on him.
So the reason the trail is where it's at through that section along the power lines, I'm assuming is where you're talking about. So kind of the straight section that takes a hard right bend.
Yeah.
So if you look where the actual property that we kind of own or have access to is more out along the river, and we know there's a bridge that was coming to affect that. So the decision was made back when the trail was in. It was easy to go along that pre-cleared route for the power line, knowing that in the future, depending on how the development is, that would have to move. It could stay the same if they don't need that property or they're using it differently. But the plan was that it would probably move closer to the river, and then it will have to cross the new road. And so that's yet to be seen how maybe it would go under, or maybe there would be an at-grade crossing for it. But it will probably go back more along the property that we actually own closer to the river is the plan.
Okay.
But yeah, it was thought out. It was just at the time the river edge right there was a lot harder to get through. And so it was just an easy way through, and the property owners was fine with it at that time, knowing that in the future there'd have to be an adjustment for it.
Okay.
And Sean, stay up there just because I want to give you a little bit of background how I remember and jump in if I'm wrong on this. And the mayor's actually got an article that'll be coming out in his newsletter talking about this. But as I understand that when that happened, we were still in the process of developing that trail, were we not? And we ended up negotiating with them to obtain some of that land, or that trail never would have gone through. That's what people don't understand. There was some give and take there. And so at the time we're going, okay, well, we'll work with you on what you're going to develop in there, but we need this ground to finish this trail. And they worked with us on it. Now we are 4 owners into that thing, I think 4 now, from who the original ones were. And we have still to this day not seen a final plan on how that's going to lay out. So a lot of this is still up in the air. And these people are jumping to a lot of conclusions, but I don't want them to think that they're just bad guys. They worked with us really well along this, and we wouldn't even have had that had they not worked with us. Is that correct, Sean? Is that how you remember that?
And Sean that we've been working with at Bach Homes, like they're pro-trail. Like they think that's a huge amenity for their people that would be coming there. So they've talked about even maybe doing some interior loops with it. I don't think they have any desire for that trail to go away. And I think we have enough room to fit along the river if we need to. It'd be nice to keep it out a little ways so we don't deal with it during flooding. But the plan is not for the trail to go away, for sure. And a lot of the comments about the golf course going away, I know you guys have already answered this and that, but they just encroached on somebody's property without permission. They never even went to the property owners and asked them for permission. They just kept expanding the golf course.
The disc golf course.
Yeah. So it goes away and they're upset to a certain extent, but it's like if the original property owners would have known it was out there for liability reasons, they probably would have never let it stay in the first place, but they wasn't around, so they didn't know. So.
And just so you guys know, there's no big revelations in this article I wrote, but I did get the development agreement. It said that the property was originally 93 acres, and they gave us 23 acres to construct our trail. You know, I'm assuming those are along the edge of the river. I didn't pull up the maps, but I think from what I get out of it, Mr. Brooks is exactly right. And I can only imagine the chance that council felt like they had. I mean, as much as I'd like to blame them for what's about to go in there, they had in front of them a chance to finish the river trail that's going to go, goes from Ogden Canyon all the way to South Weber. And they said, hey, we'll give you 23 acres of land to build a trail. And so the council was like, that sounds like a great deal. And they took it. Those trails are hard to come by. And we did put a mixed use zone on that property. And there's a lot of things that can go in the mixed use. I think we were maybe hoping for something different. I'm sure they were hoping for something different than high-rise apartments.
Brandon, you got anything to add to that? I've had him review all this stuff, so he's kind of up to speed on those, and he's looked at all those development agreements. I think we're up to 3 or 4 now, so we're down the road a ways on that one. But you got anything else you wanted to add on?
Yeah, the mixed-use zone is in our favor. Right now, the concept plan that was part of the third addendum doesn't quite hit all the elements of the mixed-use provisions. And as Mr. Douglas said, there's a certain certain authority that both the planning commission and the council has in the site plan and other regulatory review that could allow certain requirements to be made, such as trails and other things. So I think the cart's not so far out in front of us that we need to worry too bad, at least from my review.
And the other thing too that nobody's talking about is as part of all these conditions and stuff is that we told them they had to put a bridge in because we didn't think we could handle the traffic if that thing gets developed just with our one little bridge, because if that ever goes down, we're in trouble. And they've agreed to that. So, and that's not cheap. That's kind of what's held this up, at least recently, I think with Bach, is the price of that bridge has gone up to around $5 million or something. I think the last quote we got from them. So that slowed that project down for that reason alone. But we really do need that bridge in there, especially if that developing is going to go on down there. That's a big part to the city. And if they're paying for it, that's even better.
Okay. Good comment. Any other comments from the city council? Any comments from the city staff for this meeting?
No, I was just going to bring up that Ashley thing, but I did that earlier, so we're good.
Okay.
What's going next to Ashley?
That's undecided at this point. We're hearing a lot of rumors, but it's undecided. We don't know. But they're only taking up about 2/3, I think, of that building. Do you know for Sean what that is, for sure? They're not taking up the whole thing. There's enough pieces left over, at least one piece, that somebody else could go in there. We're exploring all kinds of options, so we'll see where we get with it.
Okay. Any other comments from the staff? All right, and I don't have any comments for right now, so we'll move on to item number I, budget planning. Mr. Carden.
All right, so we kind of have another agenda for this part of the meeting. So I think Steve's going to kind of start us out unless the mayor has anything else to add. Just one item to note, we had on there LRB doing a presentation about the Riverdale senior housing. Due to some scheduling conflicts, they couldn't come tonight. So we've got that scheduled for our next budget meeting on May 7th. That was the next time they could come. So.
Yeah, I'll just quickly say a couple things here. That's the Fred Philpott, the survey that we are looking for to give us a little more information on the senior center and stuff. And Fred was tied up. We just couldn't get him here, but we had it on the agenda. We were hoping we'd get him up here tonight, but it just didn't work out. So we'll still bring that in to you and go over that. I submitted that in that strategic planning, just his survey part of it. So you have the information, but we wanted him here to explain it, to just explain a little bit further and more in depth as to why he ended up where he was. So this is just our annual meeting that we always start off really early on in the budgetary process, and we have Cody come in, and this is the fire hose version that he gives you, and he'll fly through all this stuff. One of the things I listed on here was the session objectives. That was item number 1. If you recall, in your strategic planning, I gave you a couple of homework assignments, and based upon all the responses I got, I have not been able to do anything on their strategic objectives because I didn't get very many responses, to be honest with you. I got a very small response, so I would encourage you to get those to me. We need guidance. Obviously, there are some things that we have to deal with, and you know those on the bigger items, but if there's other things there, we want to know where the council is so we can kind of plan on this and start going in those directions and looking at some of those things. And not just in our strategic objectives, but the same thing on those grants and things like that. Again, we want to start writing some of these and doing what Rich did and get some basically free money or at least some matches on some stuff, but we want to know where you guys are at. And so the more information you can give us on that, and I appreciate those who submitted something, the better, because that's helpful to us. Otherwise, we're guessing. And so we're going to put in a lot of time and work on things that you guys may not even want. And so take a look at some of those things. If you have things that are big concerns to you, make sure you let us know. And I don't even care if it's way organized or anything. Just get us some information so we can look at those things. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on that. Obviously, we don't have anything there. So the bulk of this is going to be Cody. The other thing when we have this meeting early in the year, and this kind of come from staff a little bit a couple of years ago, is they kind of feel like they get left out of this process. And so I want them here. I've asked them just to give you the 30,000-foot view on their departments. And so they'll touch upon some things. Some of them will get in a little more depth than others, but they're here for questions too. If you have questions for them, make sure you hit them up on it. So Obviously, and this is kind of a mix of, it's hard to separate these sometimes because especially Rich's stuff, because he's about half and half between RDA and city council. But I still wanted him to talk about it because all of it's budgetary things. So each one of them are here, and there is a section down here a little bit further where they'll address some of their concerns. But the bulk of this is going to be Cody's, and then we'll kind of wrap it up at the end.
Okay. All right. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me. I'm just going to keep moving unless somebody says something. So to begin with, we have on here just kind of like a financial review, where are we at currently. So it's provided in the packet, but I just highlighted it so you can kind of see where we're at. So 59% of the year has passed at this point. You can see here's our general fund revenues, here's our budget, here's our year-to-date actual, and here's the percentages where we're at. You can see we're doing pretty good in most areas. This miscellaneous revenue includes some budget figures in here and rollovers and things, and that's why we're only at about 7%. For our expenditures, you can see for the most part, we're doing pretty good. Some of the departments that are in green, they have items that either they have to like front load or due to staffing changes or things, they're just running a tiny bit over the 59%. You can see blue here, streets, we just haven't had a lot of projects this year, so it's low. Non-departmental, that's kind of the offset to this up here. It includes our transfers to the capital projects fund, so that's why it's only at 12%. And part of the reason it's as high as it is because we've spent some of that ARPA money. And so that's the general fund. So you can see we brought in 52% of the revenue that we budgeted for at this point, and we've spent 39% of the expenditures. So our net income right now is about 2.3 million. However, there's restricted money up in the revenues. So if we pull out the net of those, our Class C and our local option, we're at about 1.6. There is other restricted money in there, but those are kind of the reoccurring ones that are, like there most of the time.
I was just thinking for Mike and Stacy to describe the ARPA money.
So you're probably kind of familiar with that. That was that American Recovery Plan Act money. We got it based upon population. So like Ogden and some of the bigger cities, they got tons. We didn't get as much, but a lot of it was earmarked for like infrastructure type projects. We've been using, Sean's been spending the vast majority of that. It was originally meant to be spent by the end of March, but in some of the new FAQs, we have until like the end of 2024 to earmark it, and 2026 to actually spend it. And so Sean's been largely using that. What we spent it on this year is some of those water lines running under the river and the railway. So we have some other ideas for what's left. I just sent Steve and Sean an email on that, and I think we have about $129,000 left at this point of our ARPA funds. So we're doing really well. The last couple of years with sales tax, our sales tax has done great. And so that's why we are where we are. Some more of this money is restricted. So all that's not just available for appropriation, but we have been doing really well. This is just, I put together a little different sales tax graph. It took a bunch of time, but I separated out between our sales and use tax and our city option. So you can now see what that's made up of. And that's in the packet for you as well to look at. As far as compared to the prior year, you can see in general, this is kind of interesting. All of our taxes, licenses, and permits and intergovernmental revenues are down compared to 2023. However, our other charges are up. We've actually been doing amazing on our fines and forfeitures, and that's largely due to both the Highway Patrol and our local PD is writing a lot of tickets. And so our court is like super busy. We're to the point that based upon the level we are right now, the AOC dictates how many employees we need, and we would actually, if it was based upon just 2024, we'd actually have to have a third full-time employee. We have that many cases going through the court.
Can I just address that one really quick? Legislatively, this year, I mentioned in our strategic planning, there's a good chance we're going to lose the court. The state did push that today, but it did not pass. Or they pushed it this year, but it failed. So they got some opposition from cities and stuff. But I still anticipate at some point in time, there's a chance we'll lose any of that revenue right there. The cities have also let them know that that's not going to be cheap, and you're not going to use our buildings for free if that's what they're thinking. So I don't know if they'll back off on it or not, but they tried. The first time was this year, but it failed. So,
Okay. Any other questions?
Just for my own information, can you expand on the intergovernmental revenues? What's encompassed in there?
So that's all sorts of different stuff. Let me hold on one sec. So some of that, like the previous year, would have included some ARPA funds. That's where a lot of our grants go, like our federal government funds, such as like CARES Act, ARPA. We've got some CMAQ money coming for the roundabout on 1050. That's where our money from the local option sales tax that goes through the county that we get for highway and street improvements. That's where our Class C road monies are, state liquor fund, and then just miscellaneous other intergovernment revenue, which includes like Jared's funding that we receive from the county for the heavy rescue.
So is the ARPA the main reason for the large discrepancy between last year and this year?
That is correct. Yep, that's why it changes. And sometimes, like if we receive a large grant one year, then we may not receive it the next year. Right. So, but yes, that's primarily the big change there is the ARPA funding. So, as far as expenditures go, you can see most departments are pretty consistent with the previous year. The one change, if you remember, we created like a building department just because the state likes more and more. They want to make sure that like what we're charging for building permits, we're spending on building permits. So we separated that off. So that came out of community development. So that's why community development looks so low. But that building department's new. Those ARPA expenditures are there. That's why non-departmental is higher than the previous year. And then the rest of those are just kind of standard or like we moved the fire inspector here to the fire department. That's part of the reason we're up. And so everything looks pretty consistent. As far as enterprise funds go, if you remember, we almost had a rate increase in every enterprise fund, largely due to what we've historically done is as the major supplier, if you will, within the enterprise funds has an increase, then we've tried to pass those through to the residents. So we're kind of like holding the line. And just for everyone's knowledge, enterprise funds, they're almost like they're not a separate legal entity, but they're like a separate business, if you will. So they should have a profit motive and those kind of things. Where the general fund, we know that we're just providing services and there's not really revenue to offset a lot of those. And so we try to have a profit there just so that we have money, like in the water department, so we have money to replace the lines as they go bad because they're going to cost way more now than they did 50 years ago when we put them in the ground. And so you can see our water sales actually in the water is down slightly, even though we had a small rate increase. Our other revenues, this is largely due to interest being up. And then also, if you remember, we have those fee and lieu's now where people can pay for water shares. They pay the city and then we buy them through Weber Basin. We had about a $60,000 one of those this year. That's why the water revenues are up. We're down in expenditures in the water fund because we haven't done any projects or any significant capital projects. For sewer, we did have that rate increase. That's why our revenues are up. The other revenues are up because of interest.
So two things. One of the things we've done over the last few years is anytime we have a rate increase from somebody, what we used to do is eat those, and then it would come to the city council and they would bump the rate. So we passed ordinances that just, as a rate comes through, it just raises. We don't have anything to do with it because we didn't have anything to do with it. And the other one, did you just say that they can come and pay us and then we buy the water shares?
So that's what Weber Basin makes us do. So like if they don't want to go buy water on their own, that's where that development agreement that comes in, like recently with Tesla and Shake Shack. So they calculate how much water is needed, and correct me if I'm wrong. But then we tell them how much the water is going to cost through Weber Basin. They basically pay the city, and then the city turns around and buys the water through Weber Basin.
The water's available when somebody comes in and does it, we buy it, and it's okay. It's not, because we went away from that where it was a fee based, where we really didn't gain any water. We just got the fee and then we didn't buy the water.
No, they have District 4 water still available. Who knows how long that lasts? More or less conservation water. It's not, there's no new water up there.
Right.
It's whatever they're saving by people being conservative. is what water is gonna be available for future development. So that's where they're at.
And Weaver Basin won't sell directly to developers, only to cities. So that's where we had to step in and get creative with our new ordinance and stuff and came up with the concept of the development agreements. And Weaver Basin bought off on that and said, okay, we can live with that. So we actually buy it on their behalf, but that's how we have to do it to
But
get
if
it.
it goes away and we're saying we can't get the water from Weaver Basin, then it halts development or?
We still have some of that underground water that we're working on trying to get either Weaver Basin to pump for us, or we would have to drill a well. We do still have some underground available. It could be for future.
And then we are responsible for like the M&O on that. So when the developer comes in and says, hey, I want to buy this water, then we do have a reoccurring cost to like maintain that water each year through Weber Basin. Is the back end of it.
That's the same with all of our water we have through Weber Basin though.
Yeah, it just goes up, right, by that new increase of water.
So when somebody comes in and we do the developer agreement to tell them how much water they have to have and how much that's going to cost, we go to Weber Basin before
they have to approve the
it,
developer
right?
agreement before we like accept a check. So we know that Weber Basin's willing to provide it.
sell.
They have the capacity, and then we turn around and say, okay, you can pay us the $60,000 and we'll buy the water. So, yeah.
Okay, I did have one other question back on the general fund expenditures. The streets department is way, way, way down. Is that just are there future projects bigger that are going to come in the spring, summer? That
So you should be seeing 2 or 3 bids in the next month and a half.
okay. That's I assumed that it was just more of a
Season
timing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you know how that goes. Like if we get projects in the fall or the spring. So, yeah.
The water's the same way. The water's down, but we've been using ARPA money to pay for it. Is that not right?
Right. Right.
So it looks like the water fund budget's different, but we use the other money instead of it, so.
Okay.
So that's why there's no like capital expenditures in the water fund, because we've been paying for it out of the general fund with that ARPA funding.
Does ARPA fund have a sunset on it?
Yes, we've got all the money that we can, and that's what I was saying a few minutes ago. It was going to be the end of this month, but it looks like from the new FAQs that we have until the end of 2024 calendar year to earmark those funds and then spend them by the end of 2026. But we're hoping to get them spent earlier than that because we have to do reporting on them every year, and so that's where we're looking at them. And we got like 129,000 left. So we have some ideas for that, and Sean hasn't finished his other project all the way, so we'll get that spent. So, any other questions? Okay, so the sewer fund, so this was probably just the rate increase and some growth. Other revenues, maybe the interest. This is up largely due to Central Weber. Their cost went up a little bit. Stormwater funds, we did have a rate increase in the stormwater. That's the first time I think since we implemented the stormwater that we had a rate increase last year. This is interest. This is just some miscellaneous, like kind of the different line items going up. And then we had about 20,000 worth of capital outlay, and we didn't have any in the previous year. So that's the increases there. The garbage fund, we had a fairly significant rate increase. If you remember, the transfer station went up about 13%, and then our hauler went up like 6%, if I remember right from looking at my notes. And so that's why the revenues are up there. This is a little bit of interest. In the garbage fund, we don't try and make a lot of money, if you remember, because we're really just paying like the hauler and the transfer station. So we try to get that one so that we're just covering things. We have a little extra, and so we're doing pretty good there. So really, you can see with those rate increases compared to the prior year, we're doing really well on most of our enterprise funds. Like they look like they're doing pretty good this year. And I think that's about it for the financial update. So unless you have any questions, so overall, like things are pretty consistent with the prior year. A few revenues are up, some are down. Our sales tax, if you look at this graph overall, we're down about 140,000, I think we are, or just over 100,000 from last year, and we're down slightly from 2022 year to date, but we're still doing, like quite well on our sales tax. So,
But realistically, with inflation, we should be doing quite a bit better.
Right. And that's where I'd say that probably we're starting to see probably like some slowing. Because with inflation, like usually we see a little growth every year.
Percentage wise, we should be seeing.
And this year, like we're actually going down. And so I would say that's probably indicative of people just not spending as much. So, because we really haven't, if you remember a couple of years ago, we lost like RC Willie's and stuff. We really haven't lost a big retailer that I can think of in the last year. But we are kind of like seeing a little bit of a downturn. And you can see here, if you look at this close, some months are better. Like some months we're like this. And if you remember, for the most part, so I report these as they come in, but they're actually like 2 months in arrears usually if people are reporting timely. And so this January distribution would really be for November. So based upon that, like the beginning of Christmas, like it looks like we're actually doing a little better for our January distribution. However, then you can look at some of the other months, we're down. So it just kind of, depends a little bit. So, but as of right now, we're down just a little bit. So, any other questions? Okay. The next item we usually talk about is capital. So usually that's kind of what we do at this first meeting, is kind of go over some of our changes, like wish list type items, if you will. So you can see here's our capital improvement plan. It's just simple. We haven't, some departments have added more years than others, but the main years to focus on here is like what we're doing in the current year and then what we're proposing to include in the budget for 2025. One thing that I would like to look at doing for you guys as the mayor and council, if you look there across the board, you can see two of you tonight have different devices than what the city provided, which is perfect. But one thing that I think would be a little easier is if we just increased or added like a stipend to the amount that you guys get each month to cover electronics, and then the city not provide something. If logistically it makes it a little easier, like we're still willing to help with all that, but then we just thought then you guys can get what you like and use what you want rather than having multiple devices and feeling like, oh, well, this is the city one, this is. So I don't know if you guys would be okay, like amicable to that. But we are getting to the point that those current Chromebooks are getting older, and we would probably need a budget to replace them if we don't do something in that regard. So I don't know.
Yeah, mine's given a warning that it has had its last update, and I'm about security risk and stuff. So
yeah.
So, but no, I would be fine with you, instead of buying something for us, just giving us a monthly.
So is this the finance guy or the computer guy?
This is probably the computer guy. So
And there was kind of an awkward thing. I had to go to Laura Hilton and ask her for Steve's Chromebook back. It was kind of an awkward situation where if we just bought our own, that wouldn't have to happen. He had never used it, I don't think. She was like, let me see if I can find it. I don't think he ever used it, So she had to look for it. It was just an awkward situation. So.
And then you don't have to feel like, oh, I got to use this one. You can just kind of do what you would like and what works best for you guys. So is that okay if we kind of move that direction? So we'd probably do that at that next, or at that final budget hearing in June. Look at adding it, or like if you want to take the increase this year, or however you guys want to do that. But if you just kind of start thinking about that a little bit, that would be great. So, okay, from business administration, so that's my department. We have in there two things. We needed a new copy machine. We have that now. We also needed to do some server replacements. And if you remember, we thought last year we wouldn't have to do all those. It's turned out that we've done well. So we spent a little bit of money for some licensing and things like that, but we haven't had to spend that full $80,000. For next year, one thing we would like to do, upstairs, if you look at the building, and there's a lot of broken panes that we have on the windows, and you can't really tell from the outside, but from the inside you can. And we've done a lot of work trying to get different contractors out here. Like ideally we thought, oh, that'd be awesome if we could upgrade to double pane and some of those things. And talking to different glass companies, we had several come out. To do that, we would actually have to pay an architect to redesign the outside of the building. We'd have to have an engineer re-engineer it. And then at that point, then we could have them size it. And then we'd have to have a contractor come in, like tear it all off to go to a double pane. So what we did ultimately ended up doing is we got some of those same glass companies come back, and they think they can replace the broken ones by pulling it, but it's going to be contingent on there's brackets in there in those metal hangers, and so they're going to have to see if they're going to need to take one apart, try replacing it, see if they can even get the hangers to put it back together. And so we would like to put $30,000 in the budget for next year that we could replace some of those. Just because we worry, like some of them have huge cracks, and without the tint that's on them, like some of them could fall out. So anyways, that's one of our requests there. Another one, the doors, like straight through these doors into the court, there's a set of exterior doors. They're original to the building, and they're quite old. They leak really bad. So while we were having glass companies come here, they gave us a bid to replace those doors. So we'd like to replace those. It would actually add, right now there's no windows there, and so it would add a window to the side so like they could open the sides there and get a little breeze. And so we'd like to replace those doors too and make the offices more comfortable for the court staff that works down there. As far as city administration, they didn't have any large budget requests. The building department.
Don't need new furniture?
Well, we all need new furniture. I asked my department, like a bunch of people, I'm like, what do you need? And they're like, well, my biggest concern is the building and furniture. But we didn't put anything on here because we haven't got like a lot of reception in the past.
There's a little riff about.
So
I remember.
Okay.
So, but our furniture is a year older. So,
and just for some perspective, I did take a lot. I know we're here late, but I have taken a lot of heat from Mayor Berube in North Ogden about hiring Dustin over here, and how much money we spent on him, how he got a raise to come here, how we spoil our officers and stuff. I mean, I've taken every time I saw Berube for quite a while. He just wouldn't. Mayor Money Bags was my name. I mean, in groups, but they just spent $13 million on their new city offices and police station, and. I told him the other night when we were together, I said, well, we choose to put our money into our people and not necessarily into buildings. And that finally he has shut up, like he's done. But these little 15,000, like we really do need a new city offices. That's just a fact. This building it's got to be the oldest in the county. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
It is compared to even little towns like Washington Terrace. I mean, so it's going to take a little money to keep it going if we're not going to spend $13 million, which I'm not in favor of. But
Did they bond for that?
I think so. And it went way over cost. And everyone's gone out they've had open houses and stuff. I didn't go to it. But anyway, because I don't want to see it. It just makes me jealous. But anyway, just for some perspective on the windows, the doors, like our building is old. And so if we're going to keep this thing going, we're going to have to put a little money in. So.
And they guessed it would be somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million to go through the process to redo those windows with more energy efficient ones by the time we paid an architect and an engineer and paid for the glass and all that stuff. So that's why we thought if we replaced a few panes, we'll see if we can. I think Alan used the term put lipstick on a pig a couple of years ago when we were talking about our building. So
Well, you got to replace the windows to protect the furniture that may be.
so anyways,
Well, you need to put the furniture on as a line item and put it in there.
and we can do that if we're gonna get some support there. I guess we can add it. So, but okay, community development. They didn't have any budget requests on this regard. Community services. So Rich's department. The mayor talked earlier about that ramp award. That's for those bleachers. If you remember, we budgeted the whole 125 because we weren't sure if we were going to get it. I talked to him earlier today. They've got that scheduled. It might roll over to July by the time they get the install, so it might be something you see in next year's budget as well. But that's where that's at. We've been budgeting for the community center portion of his building, not the gym. There's residential furnaces, if you remember. So we've replaced, I believe, 2 of those. And so we've been putting a little bit of money in there just in case, because his building's getting old too, that he can replace those if something comes up. In the current year, they had purchased an infield groomer. They've got that purchased now. For next year, their truck's getting a little older, so we wanted to put a little money in there. More than likely, they won't spend that unless they need it. What we did last time is we rotated a truck from Public Works to Community Services. We'll just watch
I did have
that.
a question. It says replace residential furnaces at the community center.
So yeah, if you listen, like the residential units rather than like the huge rooftop ones.
Oh, okay.
And so
But
like
it is at the community center.
at the community center. So that like in the multi-purpose rooms and the offices, they use like a residential type furnace rather than like the huge rooftop ones that are like 20, 30 grand by themselves.
Okay. And then the other thing was the grant was only 50 grand, right?
Right. So we
out of the 125.
correct. We budgeted the whole 125 because we weren't sure. So that amount we shouldn't spend 50,000 of that because we'll now get the grant to offset it or repay us however you want to look
Total
at it.
cost of the project, ripping out old ones, installing new ones, I believe off the top of my head is like 112. And so as I applied for the grant, I requested 50 because they score your application based on a lot of factors, but one of them is matching funds. And so that would give us the most amount of points possible. So out of the 112, we're going to expend 62 and we'll get the 50 from the ramp.
I just was doing the math there, and we get 1% of the total or less than 1% of the total that's being spent on ramp
And
grants.
that's more than we've got.
Yeah, and I mean this is one of the first times that we've gotten a grant like this.
Well, and then you think about the amount we contribute to RAMP.
Oh, yeah,
because it's a
that's-
sales tax.
that's
It's a
the other
sales tax
thing, yeah.
program, and so the amount Riverdale generates into RAMP, and you don't even get started on that.
Guidance from
Okay.
you guys can really help us as well on those applications.
What's that?
Guidance.
Oh
from
yeah,
you guys.
on what we want. Yeah, because we got some for some scoreboards over at Golden Spike. Did we get a little bit for that?
Yeah.
That was maybe the last thing we got. I don't know.
And we do get a population grant every year we get like $1 per person, but yeah, not a lot.
Yeah, I noticed that the Ogden farmers market got 100 grand, and we're starting a farmers market here.
Yeah,
be nice to maybe put that one in next.
Sure.
A little bit.
Any ideas you guys come up with?
$2,500. You know?
Yeah, whatever. I mean, they pay for their movies in the park. They pay for their fireworks. They pay for their concerts on the 4th of July in South Ogden. You know. So.
And I've been denied 3 times on movies and concerts and
Yeah.
fireworks.
Our fireworks are one of the best in the county, for sure.
And they're the only ones on the 4th of July.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
The only patriotic ones.
On the playground, the last playground we put in, they denied us on that too.
Yeah. Well, somebody's got to fund all the West Haven stuff, so. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're off track.
No, you're good. On fire. So in the current year budget, we had 50,000 for some PPE and equipment. They bought part of that. I think they've ordered the vast majority of that now. Jared would like to replace their SCBA fill station. I believe it's getting quite old, so that he's requesting 65,000 for that next year. If you remember, they're moving to encrypted radios, so we have 35,000 in the budget. I tried calling Jared, didn't get a hold of him, but I believe from talking to Casey, they're starting like at the southern end of the state and moving north and replacing towers and those kind of things and encrypting the radios. So we haven't done that yet, but that will be done. If not this year, we'll roll that over in the first part of next year.
Okay, the tower you're talking about up on top of by Snow Basin, and then so we can't upgrade until that's upgraded. Is that?
We're switching service providers, so it was Motorola before, now it's Harris Radio. And so, yeah, we can't upgrade the encryption. We have to basically make some changes to be in compliance with the Harris towers. It's been in the works for about 10 years and it's finally just actually happening. So, and then the encryption part of that is right now you can scan the channels, and so when they encrypt it, part of that will be that it'll be a safety issue where people can't scan the radios to see what we're doing and what's going on type situation. So that's part of that encryption money, and the other part is just so they'll work with the new towers.
And on our side, we're actually adding encryption channels we didn't have before, so we can monitor certain channels, mostly active shooter, working with PD on some activities that we currently couldn't listen to. So there's some encryption on our side. A lot of it's software updates. A lot of it's a mess.
It's a statewide thing. UCA is the Utah Communication Authority that kind of governs all the radios in the state. This has been a move that's been going on for some time. We're actually saving money because a lot of the agencies are just buying new radios, going with the Harris radio. So some of this money makes it so our Motorola radios will work, save some money, and get some more use out of those radios.
So that money will be spent in both departments, but it hasn't been yet. So, and then another thing Jared's requesting, the fire inspector, they would like to do a little bit of office remodel work over there, and then they need a new ice machine, so they're requesting $19,000 for that. So total at $84,000 for the fire.
That sounds like that there's office furniture in there.
Fire inspector needs a parking spot at his house.
Just get Cody to donate some of his and then buy him
For parks and trails, you can see I highlighted them yellow because it's easier to follow them across. But Sean just has 4 pieces of equipment that need to be rotated. So he's got a Jacobson mower for $120,000, their case tractor for $60,000, their Grasshopper 722 D2 for $30,000, and a new ATV for $14,000. And they didn't have anything in the current year, so there's $224,000 there. Police. In the current year, they've got $160,000 for in-car body camera systems. They've largely paid for that. There's just a few little odds and ends still coming in. Their vehicle, they have 6 vehicles. They're waiting on the rest, but Casey's got word that they'll have them shortly, hopefully. So keep your fingers crossed. So we're hoping that we'll get that all closed out by the end of the year. And then there's their radio money. For next year, their body armor is expiring, and so we need to replace that. So he'd like to budget $35,000 for that. Their evidence storage facility is getting old, and so he'd like to look at remodeling that to provide some more storage space and cabinets and things. And so that would be, he's asking for $60,000. And then one other thing that he would like, and this is new, he can explain this more if you'd like. He'd like to move to the flock camera system. Most of the other cities around here have those. It's basically like a license plate reader system that they can use and use it interagency and things. So there's an upfront cost per camera. So he's requesting $27,200 for 8 cameras on the major exits and entrances of the city. And then the offset to that is there's an annual reoccurring cost of about $24,000 to continue the monitoring and that associated with those cameras.
Was that the one that we'll see you run through that yellow turning red light and get your license plate, and then we mail you a ticket?
No, it's more just a license plate reader. So it'll queue on stolen vehicles. So if a stolen vehicle goes through an intersection or wherever the camera's posted, it'll notify the officers on duty they can get the stolen vehicle. That's one cool feature, but the main feature for me is that if we have a major crime, or any crime for that matter, we can use that information for investigative purposes and identify a suspect vehicle. So for instance, if we had a homicide, let's say like we did on Christmas on 1050 West, and we had cameras strategically placed on most of the exits and entrance, I would say exits of the city, then maybe during that time frame we have a half a dozen vehicles go out the exit of the city. I can now have a plate number for that suspect vehicle. So using this technology, the solvability for our crimes will dramatically go up. We're one of the only cities, I think maybe the only city in Weber County that doesn't have these cameras. And we have access to all the cameras in the county, so we're already actually using those cameras in other cities. So if I have a suspect vehicle, let's say it's a white Ford pickup truck with a bumper sticker that's a suspect in a certain type of crime, I enter that in county-wide, and it may pull up something clear out in North Ogden or somewhere else. And I'm like, oh, it gives me a lead. And surprisingly enough, we've solved quite a few cases using cameras in other cities. Just kind of a long shot, but it's worked. If we had them in our city, and I'm trying to just get the exits covered, and you know, solvability of if you're a victim of a crime dramatically increases using that technology. I'm going to try to work with surrounding cities to try to best utilize the cameras so we're not double covering stuff, because where our exit is their entrance and vice versa. A lot of those cities already have them in place, and so it costs money to move them, but the idea is that we kind of work together to use those. Real quick, just maybe touch on our evidence storage. It seems like a big number. I was kind of caught off guard how much it was going to cost to upgrade our evidence storage area. We got wood shelves that were built at the time the building was built. The room itself is a fairly large room, but it's full. I mean, if you guys ever want to take a tour, I'll take you down there. It's kind of interesting if you're not familiar with how an evidence room works, but it's full. And the reason why it's full is because every time we have a certain felony weapon case, a murder, or something of that nature, we have to store all that evidence forever. And so as the years go by, we keep occurring, especially in the last half a decade or so, these major crimes, and it's taking up large portions of our evidence storage. And so what we're looking to get is those rolling shelves. I can't believe what they cost for the rolling shelves, and that way we can maximize our
Lectern
space.
types?
Was that?
Lectern to go vertical?
Well, I think we have some upstairs in the records room, if you're familiar with over in the community development department. They're kind of like that. So they're on a rolling system, and you just can move the shelves back and forth.
Oh, okay.
You familiar with what I'm talking about?
Okay.
So we're looking to get something like that to maximize our storage space. But yeah, that number looks pretty high for. I was caught off guard as you guys, as we're looking at $60,000 for a storage room, but we're behind the times. We went and toured every evidence facility, and almost every evidence facility in Weber County, and we're the only ones that are still operating in the 90s, and we're just plumb full. So it's been well overdue. Any questions about that?
I've been getting pushed for a couple of years on those flock cameras, and I have really mixed feelings about them. Like, I mean, the part of me that wants to solve crime and law and order side is very much in favor of them. I mean, I've sat through demonstrations and everything, and the reason they've been pushing me is because of the location of Riverdale. They're like, you've got these interstates, you got Riverdale Road, and they are really amazing. At 80 miles an hour, they can grab a license plate or a description of a car. And if you have a crime that, happens in North Ogden, if the whole county has them, they're going to have that vehicle quick. Like, wherever that vehicle is, they're going to find it. And they've assured me the privacy stuff, you have to have all these logins or reasons to look for a vehicle and all this stuff. I just really worry about the big brother, to use that term, the big brother aspect of it. And I just have, I mean, this is not something I want you guys to take lightly. Like, it's a big commitment that we're going to put these, you're not going to be able to get in or out of Riverdale without somebody knowing. Just know that.
Well, whenever we do a query, we have to have a reason.
Yeah.
So it's the same as like if I was to run someone's background or a records check on somebody, like anyone in this room, technically we have the authority or the capability of searching you. But we have to have a reason. We can't just do it because we're curious. And so we would have some checks and balances in there, and there's some already in there where we would do audits and things of that nature to make sure the system's not being abused. But, I'm just like anyone else in this room. I work for the government, but on the same token, I respect people's privacy. It's just one of those things with technology where it's a great tool to have, and if you're a victim of a crime, you wish you had it, and if you're not, you're just like, stay out of my business. So it's just weighing that, and that's up to you guys to decide.
Councilor Arnold?
I think there's probably a good point as any to put this out there, but we need to put this kind of stuff together and show what Riverdale is. Like Steve, what you were saying is everything that's going on in Riverdale Road compared to what's going on to the rest of the city, and the amount of our budget that goes to public safety and just running the city, but to public safety primarily along Riverdale Road. And that's the kind of stuff that we need to put together to show, the legislature that if we're doing this, we have these costs, but it's mainly because like our 9,000 residents don't need these cameras typically for what we're looking at. But for the amount of people that are coming in and out of Riverdale, we do need them. And so we need to put this stuff together in a presentable format that they can read it and actually get what you were saying when they, you were in your meeting and you're talking about it, and they're like, oh, yeah, I get that. And maybe we can get some consideration for what we're, you know, when they're saying, hey, your property tax needs to fund your public safety. And it's like, it's never gonna happen. So we need to be able to,
Councilman Arnold, I just talked to Cody about it today. You can, we've done this before, you can look at the graph of the sales tax dollars, and you can look at the calls for service for law enforcement, and the graph will follow the sales tax dollars, which means like the old adage of if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
Well, we built it, they came, and there's a cost to that. You know, if we didn't have all the businesses here, obviously we wouldn't need the services that we need, but you can see it on the graph as back in the early 2000s as businesses came in, the sales tax dollars is easy to follow. And you can see the calls for service, whether it be police, fire, or even probably even some of our public works. The demand increased with that.
well, and I'm not complaining either, because like I love Riverdale because I feel like I live in a little, you know, I have horses across the street and it's quiet and all that kind of stuff. And in 2 minutes, I'm at Home Depot. And then an hour later, 2 minutes, I'm in Home Depot again. You know, I mean, I love it. So I mean, it's a double-edged sword, but we need to present that sword to our legislators so they go, yeah, you know what, I get what you're saying, and we need to figure that out.
Okay, anything else?
Other than you're supposed to be talking like the guy at the end of the commercial.
Oh, like super fast?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's going fast
All right,
enough. He's
sewer.
going fast enough.
I get in trouble with the mayor if I go too fast.
Yeah.
So sewer, we just have been putting together, you know, like earmarking some money for capital projects. Sean's got that capital improvement plan that he was talking about earlier, and so he'll just identify projects and use that money. And so he'd like to set aside some money for capital projects in sewer. Same thing in stormwater. Some of his current projects, they're working on those. They're also working on that study. We did that truck buyback program, if you remember, where he's just been buying a truck and rotating it. It works really good for more of their like admin trucks for him and Norm. And so they did that this year. They'd like to do that again next year. So we got $55,000 in the budget. So they've been able to like buy a truck and then sell it back for basically what it costs so they can drive it for a year for free. And so we'd like to do that again. We have one of those in stormwater. In streets, they're having a hard time finding an asphalt roller and not a used one. And so we might need to bump this up a little bit for next year because everything they're looking at, Sean was telling me, is $30,000 and it's used. So we might bump that up a little bit in the final when we get to the actual budget. And then we just have some Class C and local option road funds there that he will identify the projects. We did have in there last year the streetlight LED conversion project. They're working on that again. We're hoping to get that finished up here in the near future. So that's streets.
I got both edges of the sword out there, right there.
Yeah.
And
one of us likes it, one of us doesn't.
And then water. We've got some money budgeted in the current year, but like we talked about earlier, a lot of that we've spent out of ARPA funds. We want to budget some money in the future. Their backhoe, we bought that. It's what, 4 or 5 years old now?
It's close to 7.
Okay. So he wants to rotate that. He was telling me when we talked the other day, that's like their most crucial piece of equipment if we have a water line repair. So we've got some money in there to replace that. We will have the trade-in of the old one. And so we've got that. And we also have a truck buyback in there. So that's the total for water. So most of these are really pretty normal stuff for us. On the RDA senior housing facility, we do have in the current year budget $80,000 to replace the roof. I talked to Sean about this and Rich. We've kind of just been holding off, waiting to see what you guys would like us to do. If you want us to keep working on the facility or we need some direction there. Sean, we did have that one rooftop unit. I believe it was last year, or was it 2 years ago that went out? And so going forward, I believe is there a total of 10 of those or 11? So we've got $100,000 in there a year for the next several years to replace those rooftop units. And same kind of thing, we just need your consensus that that's okay to keep maintaining the facility, because it looks really nice inside, but some of the bones are old.
And this would be helpful when Fred Philpott's here, right? To kind of go over
Correct.
some of this.
He will go over some of this, and we had to make we really haven't met with him. We need to meet with him as a staff. He asked us for a couple things to plug into his model, but all of those can be adjusted. For instance, like the 1.8 million that we have on hand, do you guys want to spend that? Do you want to keep all of it on hand? Do you want to keep $1 million of it on hand? Like, those things are all going to directly impact the rental rates that he comes up with. And so he'll talk about all of that when he comes on the 7th of May.
You're talking about, let's just say the roof replacement. Is that for the whole building or the?
It's for the whole building. These units are the big units that are in the common areas. We still have not replaced any of the HVAC systems within each individual apartment, and they have their own. So there's 20 of those that are 20 years old. And so before long, and from what I hear of those, like, you guys think you're going to have to tear like doors out and stuff to get the old units out. Like, it's going to be an involved project.
Some of them, the framing is built around the furnace. You can't get them out without tearing off like door framing.
You're talking about the thing that goes on top of the furnace?
The actual furnace is built inside like a little closet in the room.
I know what you're talking about.
So they're a nightmare.
So that's going to be, and that's not on here yet. Like, that's something we're going to need to do in the future. And then I don't believe we've replaced any cabinets in the apartments, right? And so they're all 20 years old. And so there's some major costs there that we need to talk about. And
Are they broken? What?
they're just getting old. They're 20-year-old cabinets that weren't great to
How old
start
are
with.
you?
How old am I? I'm almost
We're
40.
gonna have to replace you.
Yeah, well,
I mean, you're
so-
not broken.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the only time this would be if somebody moved out and it was, and then we would have.
Some of that, yeah, and some of it comes back to what you guys want to do. I mean, do you want to like run it until like the HVAC units in each apartment die, and then we replace them as they die, and knowing that like we're gonna have somebody that's quite unhappy, or do we want to do that proactively and do it all as one big project and try and save some money? Do you want to do so many a year? Do you want to do them when they're vacant? Like, we just need a little guidance from you guys, what you'd like to see over there. And obviously, like, the more money we spend, that's somewhat going to impact rates too, right? Like, if you want to just pay for everything and not use that 1.8 million that we have on hand, then we're going to need to have rentals rates to offset that. So, but we can talk more about that when we have Fred here. The other thing, the kitchen equipment, I was talking to Rich about that today. I believe it was like 10 years old and used when we bought it, right?
It was used. I don't know how many years, but it was not new when we bought it.
So it's been in there for 20 years. So we've been budgeting $30,000 a year just in case stuff goes bad. They've been trying to just repair stuff for the time being, but we do have like ovens and fridges and things like that that are at least 20 years old, probably older because we bought them used. So right now that's what we're budgeting for next year. And then the dining room floor, is original to the facility. We got a $50,000 in there. I have no idea if that's a good number. I don't think any of us really do. We're just putting it in there as like a placeholder because there's been water leaks, right? And it's warped in a few places and things.
Right
So
around one of the edges, it's popping pretty good. But it's not a high traffic area, and anyway.
So that's everything capital wise that the various departments have requested for next year. So as long as you guys see fit, we'll try and fit those into the budget as best we can as we start preparing that. So if you don't have any questions, that's kind of that section. I don't know if you have anything to add. We're kind of on that current budget appropriations.
What's the total rents? I mean, we're less than 240, right? Because there's some that are over 1,000, but most of them are under 1,000.
Yeah, so I think it kind of depends because the ones, if you remember, and why don't you just talk about it because you're the expert.
Just real quick.
Just
So we have 9 one-bedroom units, Okay, and out of those 9 one-bedroom units, the higher rate is $891, is what we've been charging. I brought it with me, so we're charging that $891 in 6 of those units. Okay, and then there's 3 of them that are still on that $768 rate that we talked about last summer, and you guys asked us to increase that to the $891 so that they're equal. And we'll be noticing them in the next couple days and plan on increasing that May 1st. Okay, and then the 2-bedroom units, there's 11 2-bedroom units. Okay, and 7 of the 2-bedroom units are at $974, and the remaining 4 are at $1,105. And once again, those 974 will go up to 1105. So as of May 1st, we'll have 9 units at 891 and 11 at 1105.
Do you have the number on that, Stacy, of what that? I mean, it's, so you're 200 to 220 that were in there as far as incomes,
I
roughly.
think it might be close to 240, isn't it?
You'd have a line item in the
No, 'cause
budget
you'd
that
have to have 'em all
is
at
specific for that one.
Well, some are 11, some are at 9. So.
Yeah, but four of them are, everything's below 1,000 except for 4.
Right. And some of it depends on how many vacancies, because we've had a lot of vacancies this year and we've been doing more work to the apartment. So it takes a minute that like we're not
They'll
getting
be vacant
rent.
for a month or 2, and then we won't be collecting rent and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, and we need, even at those rates that I just told you, we need to address that. And as I'm going to meet with Steve and Cody on my budget, I've got a plan to address that that I think will work pretty well. I've looked at Fred's numbers, and I think it puts us right on track with what he's talking about. But yeah, I don't have that for tonight, but that's not, we need to charge more on rents.
I'm just doing roundabout numbers to see
and
trend
and in the
analysis.
last couple years since I took over, once we complete this last step, May 1st, it'll be a 50% rent increase since I've taken over that you guys have done, but we're still probably another 50% away. Yeah.
And we're still not at the HUD rate, even at the highest ones. When we get them up there, we're already behind by the time we get there.
We were at 100,000.
We can
Not even at 100,000.
we can talk more about it when Fred comes, but what I'm looking at based on what he has and everything, we've got to go at least 60% higher. But some of his numbers say even more than that. So
That's a girl I work with has a 1-bedroom apartment. It's a brand new apartment, but she pays $1,750, and when her lease is up, they've already told her it's going to $2,250. The same, so she's not moving. It's $2,250, and it's in I think it's September. She's going to $2,250.
So we'll try and fly through this as quick as we can. I did want to give the department heads a chance to address you, just to express some of their concerns. So, Rich, we should have just had you stay up there. You got more you want to add on all that? Or okay.
So I just wanted to share a little bit. I got kind of 3 areas that I split this up into: the community center, the senior center, and then the housing component as well. With the community center, our youth sports programs, our numbers, our registration, our participation has been pretty steady for the last few years. Haven't seen a ton of growth there. In addition to that, we're doing some after-school programs, Mondays through Thursdays. That's a pretty well-established thing that we've been doing for several years. One of the things that we're focusing on is focusing on doing a free family activity once a month. A lot of the funds that pay for that come from the CTC. And then in addition, we're going to do some like family engagement activities, like scavenger hunts, hidden coins, things
What's
like
CTC?
that. Communities that care.
Okay.
They've been providing us with a grant the last 2 years of about $10,000, $9,000, I think. So, pickleball is really popular. It's really popular this time of year. As the weather gets warmer, we don't see as many visits. But historically, only about 19% of our pickleball players are residents.
So we have a lot of non-residents that play pickleball. And we last year or 2 years ago instituted a fee to the seniors. So that's been really helpful to capture some revenue there. Another thing that we've been doing recently is partnering with other companies. We're having a hard time hiring, especially those high school kids. Staffing, you read on that report, we're 3 FTEs below what we're authorized. So to combat that, we've been working with partners and other companies that they come in and provide the instruction, provide the staffing, and it is a program and an amenity available to our residents. Some things that we're doing currently, like we have a tumbling class on Wednesdays and a karate class on Monday nights. We have another company coming in doing 3-on-3 basketball tournaments. And then right now we're working on our summer programs and our Old Glory Days, believe it or not. And a couple of notable additions to the Old Glory Days this year is we're doing a car show. We're working with the Polsons, putting a car show together for the day of in the park. And then another thing that we're doing that we haven't done before is live music right before the fireworks. We're going to try it out, see how we like it. We'll still have the music track playing while the fireworks are playing, but we're going to do a little bit of live music instead of just playing music. A couple of the concerns would be we had a ton of leaks in the gym this winter. I mean, it was a wet winter. I've talked to Public Works, and as soon as it dries out and we get a little bit better weather, they're confident they can patch those things up. The roof is not original to the building. I think Norm was telling me, I don't know if you have a better number, Sean, but he was thinking it was like 11 or 12 years old.
Probably about right. So one of the issues we used to have over there was fireworks. It hasn't been an issue lately, but it did cause us some damage originally on the original roofs, so it has been replaced. But the scuppets are what's leaking right now.
Or what?
The units, so the rooftop units, they have like a build-up dam around them that comes up so that it's not right sitting on the floor, and that's where they've kind of identified, I think, is leaking right now. And so as soon as it dries up enough that we can get a good seal, we should be able to fix it.
And then the bleacher replacement project that we kind of discussed a little bit already. I just talked to the guy today, and we should have delivery in June, and then we're just scheduling install. So it'll either be June or July when we have those new bleachers installed. At the senior center, one of the things that we're trying to do is we're having all these discussions is capture more data, accurate data, help us be able to make decisions better, help us be able to tell the story of what's happening over there. In February, we had over 2,000 visits to the senior center. About 54% of those are lunch. Okay, that's our biggest program. And then all of our other programs combined account for the other 46%. So you have like yoga and exercise classes, quilting. The health department comes in and teaches classes. And so that would be the other 46%. We've seen an uptick in lunch numbers the last couple months. So there was a 10-person per month or per day increase from January to February. And then we've also seen an additional increase so far in March. We're averaging about 58 people per day. After COVID, our numbers were pretty low in comparison. And so now we're seeing a little bit of an uptick. We typically see more people come out when the weather's nicer too. So one of the things we've been doing to try to capture data is we began offering free memberships to the senior center March 1st. So these free memberships, all they do for us is we can track the demographic data from the people that are coming. And so they scan in each day that they come, and it records the visit. It helps us track the numbers. We're not charging for those currently, but since March 1st, we've given out 312 memberships in the 19 days. 31% of those people are from Riverdale. That's the biggest population of any city, right? And then 19 come from Ogden and 18 come from Roy. So you add the Ogden and Roy together, and you get a bigger number than the Riverdale people.
That's a percentage.
It's a percentage, yeah. There's 94 memberships that we gave to Riverdale residents out of the 312. And then 15% come from other cities in Weber County. Not Ogden, not Roy, just any other city in Weber County. And then another 16% come from Davis County. Just tons of different cities in Davis County. So that's, as we continue doing that, we'll have better numbers, right? It's only been 19 days, but that's kind of the early returns and the early data that we have right now. And then with the senior apartments, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but all the units are currently occupied. I just signed a lease for a gentleman on Friday. So all 20 units are occupied. We have 10 tenants that I talked about that are on the lower rent. Okay. And so we need to get them up, and we'll be putting notices out. I got to give them 30 days notice. So I'll put the notices out in the next couple of days. And then May 1st, we'll have the rent increase on May 1st. And it'll be an additional $1,200, almost $1,300 per month in those 10 units that we bring in on rent. And then everybody will be on the even playing field.
Can I just interrupt you?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the rent increase that we did, the timeline that from last summer. What's going to take for a future rent increase? Do we need to meet, or is there an automatic? Did we talk about this?
So
is there some triggers that will automatically, or do we have to go through that whole thing?
Yeah. So as it stands, the RDA board approves rent rates. So Councilor Arnold talked about earlier tonight that you guys had an ordinance where when you're talking about those enterprise funds, that when those agencies increase their cost, it's just a pass through to the residents, correct? And you don't have to have any action. Well, currently, if you guys don't take action, the rent doesn't move. I've got some thoughts and some ideas. We've got that LRB. Is it LRB? Is that what it's called? Those numbers from them.
What's that? The HUD?
Lewis.
Fred
Fred Philpott. Okay, so he's coming on May.
He's much more accurate than
So on
the HUD.
May 7th, we'll have that.
So the HUD's just a number.
Right.
Right.
Well, they do it by zip code, but it's
Sure, but like we're not HUD, it's just a number, right? And so this is hopefully numbers that are our numbers to make our math work. He's coming on May 7th. Like Cody said, there's a lot of questions and a lot of guidance that we need from you guys on how you want to attack this and what you want it to look like. But ultimately, once we kind of get some guidance there, I've got some thoughts on how we can kind of streamline this and how we can get it to where we need it to go without just every single time dragging it through.
Emotions.
Yep. So we just have never had that discussion. Honestly, we just never had that discussion of, okay, where do we want rents to be? As we've had that in the last year, we haven't had numbers and we haven't had information. So hopefully on May 7th, we can kind of tighten some of those things down and get some guidance from you guys. So that's all I've got, unless you guys have questions. Okay, thanks, guys.
Rich.
We'll just go around the room. Then, Jared, you want to go next?
I don't know if I feel privileged or scared that my department is actually physically on there. So, yeah, there's some challenges right now. We've had some significant stuff happen in the fire department last year and previous year that's kind of really reared its ugly head. Over this past year, we have seen issues with sick leave. We've seen overtime usage, simply trying to maintain our staffing levels. I know you guys have heard me time and time again saying part-time's broke. We are down to 6 current part-time employees. We just got a 7th. I take it back. We got a 7th. We may get our full-time guy who's leaving in March to come back part-time. I'm allotted, as you saw, there's 6 FTEs down. I'm allotted 20 part-time people, and I have 7 currently to fill our shifts. When the part-time shift went to a 12-hour shift, we lost quite a few of our people. They simply work other full-time jobs. They work fire department jobs. They didn't see the benefit anymore of coming and working a 12-hour shift. And so we saw some of our more experienced and people who are working some of those hours leave. We've been able to replace some of those, but obviously we're not getting the applicants that we've seen before. Part-time, just people don't want to work part-time jobs anymore, which I understand. A lot of them are reasons for family and our younger people just have a different work ethic, I believe is some of it. So we have really no depth in the department. So this year we've been plagued with a little bit of FLMA stuff. We've had some sick leave. We advertised Paul's position in December. We still have not filled that position. So in doing so, we've had to really require guys to work a lot of hours. Just kind of give you an idea, since July to February, we've had 72 overtime shifts. Those are 24-hour shifts, 1,728 hours had to be worked by the guys who are already working. 6 shifts, we had 50, 24 hours, that was about 1,200 hours of 6 shift that we had to cover. Just our FLMA alone was 16 days, 24 hours, 384 hours. So when we run into a problem that we have one person drop out of the department, we start getting into a staffing situation that we can't cover multiple services, and including fire protection to an adequate level while providing an ambulance service. So it really starts handcuffing us on what we can and can't do. And so we've done some other things I'll get into with the ambulance later, but our struggles obviously are staffing. We are not able to hire like we used to, even with our full-time as we're seeing. We used to be able to pull people from other departments, get some good experience. Just our last hires, we pulled one out of Ogden, we pulled one out of South Ogden. That was a couple years ago, and last year. We're not seeing that anymore. Other cities around us have caught up or surpassed us in pay and benefits. Especially we're seeing some benefits coming through now that we don't provide, that cities are providing. And there's just not the draw to pull people out of their departments anymore to come to another department for 30 cents an hour or $1 an hour. Where before we really were far more competitive than we see now today. And so that draw is not for us. The other problem we have with staffing is that we require, because of our staffing levels, we have to, the day that person walks into a shift, we're expecting them to get on a fire truck and function as a full certified, experienced firefighter. We don't have the luxury of Roy and Layton and other departments to kind of stuff somebody away a little bit and give them an FTO and train them and develop them and grow them. We need that person with certifications that can walk in the door and they're a plug and play. We're not getting those people anymore. We have, right now, I have 3 applicants for 2 full-time positions, and we sent out a notification that we're testing them on the 29th. We've had 1 response back from those 3 that they're going to actually show up. So there's a lot of things that we have to work towards changing that dynamic of what our hiring pool, how we can develop that hiring pool and get something that we currently cannot get. So the depth is really kind of killing us a little bit. Concerns? We have right now, we're in our reserve engine. We've been in our reserve engine for about 3 weeks. Our front out engine's getting some repairs done to it. When we repair a fire truck, it's not like flipping you just send it in the shop and get it back the next day. So it's at least out for another week. We're hoping it's not gonna be longer than that. So about a month. The engine we're in is 25 years old. We've had issues with that truck. We replaced the tranny, the bottom end, the top end of the motor, the pump. We've put some money into this over the years, but it's still a 25-year-old engine. If I ordered a brand new engine today, we're looking 3 to 4 years before delivery. So in our current situation, that reserve engine will be probably 30 years old if we ordered an engine this year to have it replaced. Ambulances, very similar. We have a reserve of a 15-year-old ambulance. Ambulances are 18 to 24 months out, so we're looking at an ambulance now that's going to be 18 to 20 years old by the time we actually get that delivery and move it forward. It's a little scary, especially when you look at your front outs now that will be 12 to 13 years old as your primary units. And generally, we like to see a 10-year rotation and nothing older than 20 years sitting in your stations. We're not going to get there on that. And I think we're going to continue to struggle in that area. Other than that, ambulance discussion a little bit. Okay, well, I'll do that. I was probably as surprised as anybody when I went to Steve and suggested that we start looking at other options to providing service. I became a realist over the last couple of years. I was very much an optimist before that. over the last couple of years, I've kind of come to the realization that as a city, we're not financially able to support a fire department that can provide multiple services at this point. And that would require that we put a lot of tax money into the fire department, which everything we're talking about with 2030 is not going to really happen. So I become a realist. So no different than the approach of the interlocal with South Ogden, looking at additional revenues, increasing our ambulance revenues with billing and different things that we've tried over the years to kind of offset some of that. We just kind of hit the point now that we have to really decide as a city. We need to look at our service level, we need to look at what we're providing to our citizens, and we need to look how we can provide that. And if we can't provide it as a city, we really have to look at, well, who can? And the first thing that I would like to tackle sooner than later is I've had lots of discussions with outside cities. I've got a couple cities interested that would potentially provide our ambulance service, sorry, allergies, ambulance service contracted, and then we would still maintain our full-time staffing, run first responders. Our call volume's not going to change. We're still going to have that response in that fire engine. It's going to help out with me stabilizing my staffing. It's going to help out with recruitment. It's going to help out with building those things and maintaining a fire protection level of no less than 3 firefighters on a fire truck. And that we have to have at least 3 guys to operate a fire truck, period. Somebody's got to go fight the fire, somebody's got to pump it, and somebody's got to guide it and support that firefighter. So that has to happen. That's what we're required to do by, law, pretty much. So we have to provide fire protection. We don't have to provide ambulance service. And you guys know how hard I fought over the years to keep that ambulance service, because I truly believe we should. But I also understand we can't. And we have to look at something different. So with that being said, I would like to move forward. I have an RFP developed, written. I think Steve was reviewing it. And within that RFP, it clearly states that we're not going to pay anything to somebody who contracts with us. They'll assume the ambulance revenues, but they'll also assume all costs, is what I've put in that RFP. So we're not going to pay an additional fee to have somebody come in and provide our ambulances. So I would like permission to get that out sooner than later, because until we see those proposals come in, we really don't know what we're looking at. So I think that's probably a good first step. Now, saying that, as I listened to the meeting on Saturday, there's a couple things I want to clarify. Paramedic service has nothing to do really with ambulance service. You have to view those as 2 different things. A paramedic unit is coming in a different unit than an ambulance. Paramedics have a latitude of a longer response time than what an ambulance is required to have. Transportation of a patient is critical, and a paramedic coming into our city cannot transport a patient. So the ambulance part of it is separate than the paramedic service. So when you look at an ambulance, you want to make sure that transportation is still in a timely manner. And I believe the 2 cities we're talking to right now can provide that. They can meet the response times and the transport times. But understand, as soon as we take this out of our city, we lose control. We lose what service that we would normally provide that now we're going to ask somebody else to provide. We still have to maintain a medical control physician, but she will have probably more control than any of us will have on getting that service level coming towards us. So it's just not, hey, we're going to contract our ambulance, good, get rid of it, we're fine. There are some things that are still concerning about us taking out our ambulance in Riverdale. And if the agency who takes on the ambulance doesn't add an additional ambulance, we just lost an ambulance as part of our entire county response model. So that will affect the county dropping an entire resource. So there are some negatives. There's always pros, but there's always cons. So as you kind of think of that, kind of keep some of that in mind as well. But I think at this point, this is a good first step that we consider this and see if we can't get an RFP out and see what that means.
I have a question. Yeah. So let's just say somebody in Riverdale has some sort of medical emergency. Fire truck still rolls out with our guys on it. They get an EMT service.
It'll be advanced. We'll still have
advanced EMT. Okay.
So they can start IVs, they can give medications, they can manage airways, they can do everything they can do currently in their ambulance, but they don't we just don't have the transport side.
Okay.
So then we
And
just
I-
have to wait for
honestly,
the
I'm just trying to make sure I understand. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, they can-
so we're still going to have guys from Riverdale
Mhm.
show up probably first.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully
Or
first.
We have other.
They're gonna be driving an old fire truck.
Contingency plans on the east side.
Yeah, that's true. That's up on the east.
But yeah.
They'll be driving an old fire truck, an old beater, but
Hopefully not
and
too
hopefully
much
hopefully
longer.
tranny goes and no, just kidding. But okay, so I just want to make sure I understand that. Okay.
Yeah, and then hypothetically, your ambulance may come out of Roy, it could come out of Ogden. You're looking at Roy's probably, you're talking 4 to 6 minutes in our general central area,
Mhm.
maybe a little bit longer. Ogden could vary. I mean, you could get a station anywhere within Ogden.
And those will be paramedics?
Nope, they'll be
No.
advanced EMT.
Advanced
So there's
EMTs,
not
okay.
a paramedic unit that's a 911 ambulance in Weaver County that's a paramedic unit.
Okay.
They're all advanced EMT units. Your paramedic unit is coming out of Roy. There's 3 in Ogden and 1 at Weaver Fire District down in this valley. So if Roy's busy, we get Ogden's. If Ogden's busy, we get Weaver Fire District. So that's why they have allotted additional response times that they can be approved by. So.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah, just want to make sure that clarification was that it's not a paramedic thing, it's an ambulance transport.
Good question on personnel.
Sorry, just throw something out there. That's how Riverdale historically operated. About 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was just how we described it. Ambulances came from Roy and came from South Ogden to depending on what side of the city it was on.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah, I've told this story before. My wife was involved in an accident at Riverdale Elementary School, and they called an ambulance, and it came from Roy. And while she was waiting, the ambulance got there and was immobilizing her and putting her in, and some gentleman came up, driving like crazy, and he had his mother was in the car who had a heart attack, essentially. I don't know, had a life-threatening issue. So they left my wife on the gurney or on the whatever, and they dealt with her. They called another ambulance. The first one came from Roy. The second one came from South Ogden, but that other person was life-threatening, so that took priority, and so the attendant from Roy stayed with my wife. Then the other one took the other one, so she was with a Roy attendant in a South Ogden ambulance because she was transported second. But anyway, that was very synchronized and coordinated, and then they just met up at the hospital and got back in their original vehicles. But okay, that was just off the side. But that was before we had an ambulance service, and so that was exactly how it was working. Is fire service personnel, is that a young man's game? I mean, do you get 30, 40-year-olds coming in to the profession?
No, not generally, and what we like to see is studies have gone forward. Once you hit the age of 40, you go up to about a 50% chance on a fire scene of having a heart attack or stroke. So we like to see our guys get out of full-blown operations by around 40, 45. We see a lot across the country, department who have volunteers anymore. A lot of our line of duty deaf people that happen on scene are in their 60s because they're in that operation mode. So no, it's generally a young man's sport unless you talk to Dean, and Dean's a rarity to our system. But yeah, Dean's,
Okay, I was just wondering where you're recruiting but anyway, I get it.
I would love to recruit out of the fire academy, which we haven't had that opportunity a whole lot because we're getting inexperienced people. And a lot of them don't have their advanced EMT. If the ambulance wasn't part of our system and we had that situation where our staffing was where it needs to be, we now can take a recruit right out of the academy who has their advanced EMT, or not even their advanced. We can give them a time frame to get it because we have that ability to train that position, have that open. Where right now we don't.
All right.
So
the thought of, I'm a veteran, military veteran. I interact with the VA on different things, and they're always looking for opportunities to people coming off active duty to put them, because not everybody wants to go to college, but looking for a career. And I just, I interact at these job fairs and whatnot, and I got to tell you, I don't know that I saw law enforcement. I didn't know that I saw fire there. But anyway, just an observation.
It's one of those pools I'd love to hit because they just had, this last academy had 68 applications for 24 positions in the academy.
Oh, wow, good.
So we have the interest. It's just putting the people in the departments where they can work. So.
Chief, I just want to tell you thanks for being flexible. I know you're passionate, the ambulance, you love it, and I mean, but I would like to see your department feel like they're living up to what they expect that they want to be able to deliver, and not we can't do anything. We're doing everything and not doing anything exactly how we want it done. You guys have high standards, and I'd like you to feel confident that you're staffing things appropriately and not trying to do too much with too few guys. I mean, I've run into that where I work, and it's not a good feeling. And so I just appreciate the flexibility. Like, I don't like to see the ambulance go, but I want to feel confident that we have the right number of the right people in that fire station. And when we have a fire, that's what's going to get covered first, so.
Well, and just to let you know, so we shut the ambulance down on January 25th and started relying on our outside agencies on days that we could not staff over 3, because that's where we get into our one person on a fire truck situation. We shut our ambulance down 14 times from January 30th to March 13th. That's 230 hours Riverdale wasn't running an ambulance, and those shifts were varying between 12 and 24-hour time periods. Roy and South Ogden have been very generous. Now we're going to run into a problem come April, because I don't feel good, and I sent Steve an email on this, I don't feel good about shutting our ambulance down, having 2 full-time people gone. Because if we have 2/3 of our shifts that we're shutting the ambulance down, we're looking almost every day, every month. That's not fair to our surrounding agencies, that we're not taking care of our responsibility right now until we can get this thing taken care of. So we're probably going to see our overtime go back, because we're going to have to fill something. Plus, I'm going to be gone all of April. So it's just, my wife's having surgery. I will be on FLMA.
You were going to go on Survivor like Cody.
Yeah. Going on Survivor. So yeah, but if I have your blessing to kind of move forward with at least the RFP, and let's look at what that looks like, that'd be nice.
Let me just quickly say something. So it's not just a simple, let's have somebody come in and take over, because we lose 400 and something thousand in revenue by giving up our ambulance that they would then assume. And so we've been working on the budget to figure out what do we do with that now that we lose that. So this is a pretty complicated issue. It's not as simple as we like, but until we get those proposals back, we don't know what options we have. We've got to see what these cities are going to do. Washington Terrace right now houses 2 ambulances, don't they, for Ogden City? At least 1, I know. So they're already doing it. Exactly what we're looking at is trying to. Now, I don't know that we would do that because we've got houses around us close enough that we wouldn't necessarily need to. But it's pretty complicated. It's not as easy as we think. And again, it's Riverdale's situation that makes this so tough, because of our just everything. We need this full staff during the day, but at nights our numbers don't necessarily justify that big of a staff. But we still have to have them, and so you can't. It's just tough. The whole thing's tough, but I think we're headed in the right direction. I've been saying this for a while. It's just not working. And so we've got to think outside the box and come up with some different things. But we do need to move forward and see what we can get as far as proposals go from some of these other agencies.
It's really coming down to our fire staffing. It's just not safe. It's hard on the guys. It's just not what we have to be doing and should be doing. So. Okay.
Thanks.
Get it out.
Thanks, Terry. Sean?
I don't have as much. Our staffing's been pretty good for the last couple of years. We've actually kept our people, so that's been a blessing compared to what everybody else is dealing with. One of the big things we're going to be bringing to you that I'd like you to start thinking about is the playground at Riverdale Park. So we're looking at that replacement on the big playground at Lower Riverdale. And so as you're driving around, be thinking about what you want to see. We're going to bring several proposals as far as designs and layouts, but we're going to be asking you guys to make a decision on that, what you want to see there and what fits in our budget. So we'll hopefully bring at least a couple different vendors with different designs, different layouts. So if you're talking to people, ask them what they want to see in the playgrounds. We've did a little bit of research ourselves, and we think we have a couple items that are pretty popular. The other thing that might come up on that is access for all access, and naturally on that playground it's not very big, and so we're not going to have a ton of all access on it, but we will try and provide for some on that. And then the other things that we talked about a little bit earlier, we'll have a big chip seal project coming. We'll have a street project over on 5050 going from 1150 into Golden Spike Park. We're hoping to finish the water line to the south of us under the railroad tracks. The railroad's still been giving us fits on going under the train tracks. Hopefully in the next month we resolve that. We're going to have 2 sections of sewer line coming to you, and then some new storm drain boxes up on 1150, and a new section of storm drain through Golden Spike Park. And other than that, I think we'll pretty much be business as normal. So I don't know if you guys have questions or you have thoughts or ideas on what you want us to pursue, but that's kind of where we're headed. And we'll also be doing some work on the trail from here to the south, and then next month we'll be doing some crack seal, filling in some of them bigger cracks, and then also a surface treatment on that section from here to the south. So any feedback you can give us going forward too. I mean, we don't hear a lot, so we're assuming it's fairly decent out there. We don't hear a lot from the residents.
The only thing I've heard is, are you going to be allocating a certain amount for curb replacement, gutter replacement?
So it's really hard to go out and try and do single sections of curb replacement. I mean, we hear that, can you come and do this one section of curb in front of us? And if we don't tie that into a project, the cost per foot is astronomical. So typically what we offer right now is if a resident wants to do that, we have a 50-50 program where they find a contractor to do the work, and as long as it's in a reasonable range, we know it's going to be a little bit higher because it's sectional work. We'll go 50% of the cost for them in front of their home. If we don't do it that way and it's not a huge safety issue, then we typically do it when we do a street overlay.
Any way to see a schedule for street overlays?
So typically what we do with street overlays is we do a survey. We're just kind of getting through it right now as far as we'll go out and drive every street and try and look at them as far as aesthetics, and then that would be the project that we do for the following year. So it just depends on like crack condition, edge condition, drivability, and then like some years like this year we're putting most of our funds into surface treatments on the ones we did in the last 5 years that the oil starts to come out of the top, so we're putting the chip seal on them to preserve the ones that haven't deteriorated yet. So it kind of bounces around on that, but if you have something specific we can look at it and see where they kind of fall. But typically, and it can change from one year to the next, you know, depending on conditions. Like you think this year, oh, it's not bad, but next year it's blown up. And the more freeze and thaw cycles we get, the harder it is on our roads. This year wasn't terrible, and then the other thing that plays into it is if we're going to have a water line replacement, we don't want to put new asphalt down on top of that. So the capital facility plan will kind of address that, so we can do some of that as far as what roads we do over top of them. And I know there's residents out there that ask us that. You know, I know the mayor just had one recently, and I haven't heard back since we gave them the option, but we did offer to go 50-50 with them, but I just haven't heard anything back on it. So.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Douglas.
Here's my thoughts, if I could, just really quickly. We'll have Casey wrap it up, but some of this stuff that I wanted Brandon to cover, I don't want to go too fast on. You guys need to understand this because it's kind of important. That's also contingent upon what America First does, and we're still waiting for some final stuff for them, and I don't think 2 weeks is going to put them back any further. So I'd rather hold off on everything else. We'll just finish up with Casey if you guys are all right with that, and then we can bring this back in another meeting on some of these other things.
Yeah,
We
that'd
good?
be great.
All right, I'll try to make it quick. Thanks for your guys' patience. We appreciate staying late tonight. Just real quick thought. I drove to the city yesterday, maybe the day before. Tried to hit every avenue in the city. And as I drove around, I looked how clean and nice the city is looking. Granted, it's winter, it's spring. There's still some cleanup with our code enforcement we can do, but the graffiti, I feel like we're staying on top of it. The transients, camps, we're staying on top of it. We're not perfect, but we're staying on top of it. Panhandlers, couldn't find one. And then I started pondering about major crimes and things that we've had, some of the challenges we've had, a lot of which have been we talk about the commercial district, but most of our major crimes and things that we've dealt with have occurred in a residential area. And I'm grateful that we've been able to resolve those crimes. Knock on wood, we may not keep our luck, but then I think about our schools. We got to get over at UMA. We got our officers that sit in the school zone every morning, and they kind of go the extra mile. We get treats at the office all the time, people saying thanks, and we're loved by our community. And what this really boils down to is the people. That is my priority, is the people. It's the residents that we serve. It's the people that serve them. It's the people that represent the community. And so my number one priority coming to this is taking care of those people so we can continue to take care of the residents. We talked about flock cameras. At the end of the day, without good people, those cameras mean nothing. So what I'm here to say is the challenges I have, I'm grateful. We don't have a lot of big challenges. We've got good people that are getting the job done. We've lost some good people to retirement, and as you've seen tonight, we're able to fill some people with some replace them with some good people. And it's going to take a while to get them up to the experience they had, but we got good people. Some of the recruitment efforts that we've had lately, it's not as good as it used to be. And that's because, as we talked a little bit about North Ogden, their chief is like, oh, how do you pay him so much money? Well, I wish I would say to their mayors, like, where have you been? For 20 years, North Ogden's been that far behind everybody. It's nothing new. And so our biggest challenge is not competing with North Ogden, it's competing with South Ogden. It's competing with Roy. It's competing with Ogden. It's competing with Layton. It's competing with David, everywhere in Davis County. All those cities I just named, we're either equal to or behind, some substantially behind, which makes it more difficult for us to get those lateral recruits. We were able to get Dustin. He's more experienced because North Ogden's that far behind. We're not going to be able to steal some from South Ogden, Roy, Layton, Clearfield right now because we're a little bit behind. So I don't want to get here in doom and gloom. I think that the process that we have, that you guys have supported for, I think it's been, 16 years, which is with the way we do our salary and benefits is worked really good. And the best predictor of the future is the past. And I feel like in the past it's worked great. We're just in a unique scenario where we talked about inflation, we talked about these big raises that everyone's getting, and it for law enforcement. And when you have the high up here and the low down here, the way we do our salary, the average is here. When the gap is more narrow, like it has been traditionally, highs here, lows here, we're in the middle, which bumps us up and makes us very competitive. So my biggest challenge is what's going on with the times. And so what I'm telling you is we just need to continue supporting the people and trying to look at ways we can increase our benefits. But I feel like the way our salary is done, to stay competitive is going to be fine. Yeah, it's put us behind the last couple years, but it's just because those tsunami raises. And if we had more time, we can talk a little bit more. I think I talked to Councilman Richter about it in Haas. But we just need to continue supporting the people so we can provide the best service. And I think Riverdale as a whole, whether it be Public Works or the fire department or wherever, it doesn't matter where you go, in which department, we go the extra mile. We wear a lot of different hats to try to provide the best service we can. And so we've got great people now. We just need to kind of continue doing that same mission as far as putting people as a priority. And that means the residents, the people that serve the residents, and obviously you guys who represent them. So That being said, my challenges are just we just got to keep kind of moving forward in the direction we have and putting people as a priority. And I think when we do that, everything takes care of itself. We have happy residents, and we get good service, and we get things done. So if any other questions you guys have, like I said, I don't want to carry on all night, but we can talk about it later. But just want to thank you guys for your support. That's it.
Thanks.
That's all we'll do tonight. Thank you. Appreciate your patience. We still have more to cover. Some of this stuff's it's going to be good for you to hear, but I don't want to rush through it. We need to give it its due time. So
We don't want to keep going. Like, do you have somewhere to go, Mr. Brooks, or is it like?
hey, if you guys want to stay, I don't care. To be honest with you.
Well, I don't know if you guys know, but today's Mr. Brooks' birthday. And what a
My
terrible
wife is
thing to do.
texting me and wanting to know where I'm at. So that's not the reason why I'm leaving. We would be fine. Trust me.
That's dedication. That is dedication, Mr. Brooks. And
Yeah.
so we appreciate you staying late on your birthday. I mean, yeah, we couldn't have done this meeting without you. And so
No, we've got a lot going on.
it was
I mean,
a hard
it's
decision.
everywhere.
We
so.
appreciate you sacrificing it all and for it. So
Thank you.
I won't make everybody sing.
I wasn't
to
going
you
to say
tonight,
anything.
but,
So did Michelle tell you? I was trying to keep that quiet.
no, I have it on my calendar. So
Oh,
Actually, we saw the envelope with your birthday card in it, and you're
just kidding. Cody told me. So yeah. Otherwise, I'd have had a cake here tonight. But now it's on my calendar. So next year.
We're good. Thank you, though. Appreciate that.
All right, so we'll just wrap this up then. If everybody's done, we'll just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
up. You would.
Don't let it die. Let it die. Okay, that one dies. Do we have another motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, we got a motion. Second. All right, all in favor say yes. Yes. Bam, we're adjourned.
All right, Annie?
Can't break the habit. You did good, though, for most
Annie?
of the night.
Thanks, yeah.
Okay, we just concluded. I'm going to disconnect, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, have a good evening. Hope
Feel
you're doing
better,
better.
See ya.